Welcome to the Grange podcast, where we strive to rekindle the spirit of community and belonging. Our mission is simple yet profound: to foster transparent communication and share valuable information that brings us closer together. Join us as we explore stories, insights, and conversations with the intent of building a stronger, more connected community, one episode at a time. Today, my guest is Thomas Self. Thomas is a husband, father, and business owner based in Daisy, Washington. He and his wife, Jen, operate Waterloo Ranch, which specializes in farm-to-table food through regenerative agriculture. Waterloo specializes in raising cows and sheep, offering premium USDA quality cuts of meat to its customers. Thomas and Jen also own and operate Locally Grown Grub, a food wagon specializing in scratch-made food featuring Waterloo Ranch lamb and beef and ingredients from other local producers. You can find Locally Grown Grub at the Colville's Farmers Market this summer on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. They will be serving their signature cheeseburger made from Waterloo beef on a small batch sourdough roll, shout out Tam Smith, and their secret Waterloo sauce. I had one of these burgers last week, and I highly recommend you go and taste it yourself. Thomas and I had intended to dive into the topic of regenerative agriculture, but ended up getting sidetracked on many other topics. I look forward to having him back soon to discuss the ins and outs of regenerative ag, specifically here in the Tri-County area. If you find value in our conversation, please help spread the word by sharing this podcast with a friend. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button to be notified when a new episode is released. Anyone interested in coming on can reach out to thegrangepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in. Now, here's my conversation with Thomas Self. All right. We are live with Thomas Self, owner of Waterloo Ranch, based out of Rice, Washington. Thomas, welcome to the Grange.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. So let's start real quick with Friday. My guys call me and they are driving by Red Bridge Farms and see your food truck posted up outside and said, hey, we think we should go grab lunch at this food truck. And so I met him there, and wow, I just wanted to start with, for whatever it's worth, from me and the guys at Columbia Navigation, we had a great lunch. Thomas had a menu. You could get a cheeseburger, pickles, and an orange soda, and it was all legit. It was really good food. So how was that day for you guys?
It was good. It was a great day, actually. I mean, we sold almost 100 burgers and 50 pickles, and nothing too crazy. But Kettle's a small town, so we didn't expect. That was basically at what we expected.
Okay,
and in a good way.
Yeah,
and all the customers seemed really happy. The day was very hectic as our first outing with the food trailer. So it was hectic, but overall, no tragedies. We got, I think most of the kinks worked out, and I think we're ready for our next outing. So I think we'll be more prepared next time for what we learned from what we learned. So
the food trailer setup looks on point. Like, it's dialed. Is that a custom build, or where'd you get that?
Yeah, it's a custom build. We had some guys in Portland do it, a company named Quality Trailers, Inc. Okay. And they are, I got their name from, I think it's the Washington Food Truck Association. They have a few people who do this that they really like recommending. And so I found them. I got a quote from a bunch of different people, but these guys had references and everything, and I called them up and told them what we wanted to do, and it was just an awesome experience. Really, they were they're pros. They know what they're doing, and the design, the kitchen design, I basically said, this is what I want. They sent me a drawing of what it looked like, and I said, "Cool, let's change this, just for workflow purposes usually, and mostly, and yeah, and then we were good to go."
Is this your first time working out of a food truck, or do you have prior experience?
Um, I mean, my wife and I both have been in restaurants our whole lives. But neither of us, neither of us have food truck experience per se.
It looks just really well thought out. Like how you guys have like economy of motion almost, how it's thought out. And I geek out on that kind of stuff. Like I really love efficiency and organization. And it just looked like that trailer was really well built.
Yeah, no, I geek out on that stuff as well. And I mean, I definitely spent a lot of time thinking about the kitchen design, and just kind of based on what we knew we were going to be doing, mostly probably burgers and tacos and some fried items. But honestly, I hadn't really looked back on Friday and thought, did we design the kitchen properly? I didn't really think about it, but now that you mention it, it was pretty perfect.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I'm pretty stoked with how it came out as well. And then the exterior design was done by, well, we have a design company, Curran Design. They helped us design our logo and the exterior, and then a wrap company in Portland did the wrap. But all the interior stuff was Quality Trailers Inc. And me basically
Cool.
drawing up the design. So
what's the phrase above the window?
scratch made, supporting local.
Dude, I love that. We were sitting on the tailgate, and there's just something, and it's been the theme of this podcast the last couple episodes. I just had Tiana Wild on, I've had Tam Smith, and just like being able to produce things locally gets me excited. And when we were sitting there on the tailgate eating that burger and seeing that phrase, it just really stuck out to me, and it's cool to see. But I would like to take time, as I do with all my guests, and get to know you a little bit, kind of early life, childhood, and just kind of build the path of, how you got to Kettle Falls, and you're running, farm to table, regenerative egg farm, and that whole thing. It was kind of by happenstance. So I'd reached out to you about a week ago, and I've had a couple people. Were you at the Colville Farmers Market last summer?
Yes.
So I had a handful of people. I didn't hit that last summer, but had quite a few buddies that did, and they raved about. Were you doing sliders?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of my friends were like, "Dude, these are really good." And then I just seen you pop up on different things here and there, and with the idea of this podcast, trying to bring people in and know our neighbors again, and not just small business, but who's in our community and what they're doing and what they're up to. And so I just reached out to you out of the blue, found the contact info on your website. You called me right back, and we set up a meeting, and then it was by happenstance that I saw the food truck, but you and I have about 10 minutes together, getting to know each other. So if you wouldn't mind just, taking a minute, where'd you grow up, childhood, and we can kind of dive into that a little bit.
All right. So I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, and I guess outside of Louisville, but 25 minutes or so away from downtown. Back then, it was a suburb, but it was, I don't know, not what you think of modern day suburbs.
Okay.
This is the 80s. There was no city water or anything like that, but it was a pretty small area, but born and raised there, family of 5, 3 kids, both my parents. And my dad was in the restaurant industry at the time, and for the majority of his life, majority of his life. Eventually, he got into the hardware scene, but born and raised there, and then I got into the restaurant industry myself at 15 years old, and worked through high school, and at 18, after graduating high school, just I don't know what happened. It just I guess I was kind of bored, just doing like hourly positions in the kitchen in front of the house, and decided I wanted to get into management just to see how it worked out. And yeah, got promoted to manager at 18 years old.
Wow.
And had a good track record at that point, obviously. Just working lots of hours and kind of being a lead without the role at that point already.
What was your first job?
My first job was in fast food, and it was Arby's.
No way.
And right outside of Louisville. And yeah, fast food first, and then got into full service a year and a half or so after that.
Still while you're in high school?
Yep.
Okay. So Arby's first, and then what kind of a restaurant was your second one?
Seafood restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah, casual dining seafood restaurant. Small company in that region,
And
basically.
what was your role in each of those positions?
And when I was with Arby's, I did mostly just cashier and then did a little bit of backline stuff. Legally, I wasn't supposed to be on the back line because of the slicer and labor laws and stuff, but I did sometimes. And but yeah, so some back of the house stuff at Arby's as well. But then I got out of fast food and ended up in the casual dining scene and enjoyed it a lot more. I mean, it was just way more involved, way more moving parts, which I enjoyed. And
are you working as a waiter in that capacity, or are you in the kitchen?
When I first got into casual dining, I actually was dishwasher busboy.
Started at the bottom.
Yep, very bottom. And then moved over to a cook position. And then at some point did a little front of the house stuff. And then, promoted to kitchen manager at 18.
And then what was your dad's role in the restaurant industry?
He had worked his way up to director of operations before he got out of the industry and got into the hardware scene. But,
okay.
So I think he was a general manager before that, assistant general manager before that. So he basically did this. I kind of followed in his footsteps, to be honest, because I'm pretty sure, as I recall, he started as a busboy or a dishwasher or both, and just worked his way up in that company.
Was that an influence for you to get into it, or did you do that kind of on your own will?
Good question. I think there was definitely an influence there, and so we had exposure to kind of the behind the scenes stuff because of him, and it just seemed like the thing to do. I don't know why, but a lot of my friends in high school were doing retail jobs, and for some reason, I don't know, that just never appealed to me at all. And I'd already kind of dipped my toes into the restaurant world, and I enjoyed it. Yeah. I enjoyed the the rush almost. It can be a high stress environment, restaurants, and I kind of thrived. I liked it. I wanted the fast pace and the pressure. That's what I wanted.
Cool.
So,
what year are you at Arby's ish?
I started at 15 years old, so it would have been 1995.
What's starting pay in 1995 at Arby's?
I think it was $4.25 an hour. Yeah. It was small paychecks for sure. Of course, the dollar was a lot different then than it is now, but value-wise. But yeah, it didn't go far. You learn quickly how far money doesn't go.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
You think as a teenager, I don't know. As a teenager, you just think, oh, what I would do if I was making this much or whatever. And then you start making that much, and then you quickly realize it just doesn't go very far. Car insurance, car payments, and stuff like that. Because we had to buy, we paid our own insurance, car insurance. We paid our, if we had car payments, we paid car payments. Even as teenagers, there weren't handouts. And even before we started working in like the actual private sector, we were getting allowances as kids, for pulling weeds, mowing the garden and stuff, or mowing the yard or whatever. But it was small, but we had to use our allowance a lot of times to go. If we wanted to go out to a fast food restaurant, we had to say we'll buy it with our own allowance money.
Yeah,
that was that would get us there. We'd be able to go. But a lot of times my parents were like, no, we don't need to spend the money. And they're like, well, okay. They'd cave sometimes if we said we'd pay our own way. Yeah. And it really taught us the value of money.
And hard work at a young age.
100%.
Those are good skills to learn sooner than later.
Yeah. And I mean, we grew up real simple. You know, there was a time when I don't remember how old I was, but my parents, they sat us down and they're like, look, you know, money's tight. We need to cut out some of these non-necessities. Basically, no more Kool-Aid mix in the house, no more sodas in the house. We're drinking water. That's it. And it's like, okay. And to this day, I don't know if it was painful to switch at the time or not. I don't remember, but all I remember is that eventually it was just what we did. We drank water, and it never bothered me. And to this day, I drink coffee and I drink water, and that's it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm sure we saved a bunch of money, you know, from something that simple.
Yeah, that's good. How many kids are in your senior class?
I think around 200.
Okay. So that's probably comparable to Colville or something like that. Was your town like similar size to Colville, or would you say it was?
Good question. It's very different because there was a decent sized metro area nearby.
Yep.
You know, so you've got Colville and then you've got nothing out here.
Yep.
Whereas, I mean, we were close to a pretty big metro area, so kind of hard to say. I couldn't even tell you the number of people. Shepherdsville was the town.
Okay.
Technically, the city limits, and to be honest, I couldn't even tell you what the population was at the time or even today. But
what are you doing for fun in high school? What hobbies or interests other, outside of work?
I played soccer for a little bit, and I wasn't that good, but I loved it.
Yeah.
And I didn't get into it early enough in life. I think it was like I was a sophomore maybe or junior before I got into soccer. And I think I probably had some potential, but just got into it kind of late. But I enjoyed doing that. Other than that, though, there wasn't much time. I mean, I was working. I was all about making money. I was putting in 35 hours a week and going to high school. Sometimes I'd put in 40, even though it wasn't like technically legal.
Wow.
And then the second I graduated high school, I was 17 when I graduated. I started working 50 to 60 hour weeks, and I've worked 50 to 60 hour weeks or more since that day, basically.
Yeah. So at that time, though, when you're young and a teenager, are you spending your money? Are you working to play, or were you a saver, or what were you doing with your money at that time?
I wanted to be financially independent. Basically, I wanted to live in my own place, my own apartment at 18 years old, or even 17, because I graduated at 17. That's what I wanted. Yeah, I wanted to live alone on my own and pay my own way, and that's really where my money was kind of going. I mean, if even I wasn't, by the time I was 18, I wasn't making $4.25 an hour anymore, but it wasn't much more. It was, especially. So I think if I had to guess, at 17, 18, I was probably making like $7.50 an hour, maybe. And then I got promoted to manager, and my salary was, I think, $27,500 a year to work 50 to 60 hours a week.
Wow.
I mean, this is not printing money, It's rough, and trying to pay for an apartment on that, by yourself.
Yeah.
It was it was super rough for a while. So I moved out at 17 with my sister for a little bit. And I guess we were probably splitting it in half, I would assume.
Yeah.
If I don't really remember, but I'm sure that was the arrangement. And then and that was really tough. My sister and I living together, because I worked a lot, but I also played pretty hard when I wasn't working in some bad ways. And my sister was, just kind of, I don't know. She wasn't like, I wouldn't call her straight edge, but she was just a more responsible adult. She was older too, almost 3 years, I think. And she was just more mature than me, cleaner than me. And I was just a mess, at 18, working all the time and then playing hard when I wasn't working. And then, I was a mess to live with, I'm sure. And eventually my parents intervened and were just like, okay, this is going to ruin your relationship as siblings. You guys need to part ways. And as roommates.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, you can come back live with us, but you're gonna pay rent. And I was like, no, I'm not moving back in with my parents to pay rent. I will make this work. And I got an apartment and like a mile or probably 2 miles from downtown Louisville, so into the city proper. And yeah, by that time I would have been, I think, probably 18 or 19, and lived on my own in a pretty nice apartment. And but yeah, it was tough making those rent payments because I wasn't making a lot of money even by that time. And, you know, my salary got better every year as I proved myself. But I got myself into some hot water a couple times.
Yeah.
I mean, I had my electricity turned off more than once. And the thing about that is it's not like you can just call and get your,
and they turn it back
I'll
on.
pay you. And no, it's like, there was one time, it was a couple of days, I'm pretty sure, before my electricity was turned back on. And I mean, it was just a mess. I was a mess, you know, but I wanted so badly to be on my own that I stretched myself a little thin and also made some bad financial decisions, as people in their teens and 20s do a lot. And, but I learned a lot from it. You know, once I got into, I think, my early 20s, I don't know, probably 23-ish, something like that, I started to pull it back together and just started saving money, paying all my debts off, and paying bills on time. I turned it around in my early 20s, and yeah, got it together, saved it a bunch of money at that time, and left the casual dining restaurant that I'd been with for a while at that point, and wanted to get a job in a more corporate environment just to learn. And growth potential is kind of, I don't know, more realistic in a larger corporation. So I ended up going to Red Lobster and I went to another seafood restaurant. And so that was one of the places in town. So I went and got a job there as a manager, worked my way up to general manager there, and did really well there financially and also performance wise, and had a really great experience there. I mean, it's just wild how different it was to work in a very corporate environment in the restaurant world. And there are some bad aspects to that, but there's also some really cool aspects to that, just how systematic and methodical and scientific they can be about things. And there's a place for that, you know. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but we actually own a restaurant still, 50% of it. And I tell people my goal for that place is for it to be, I don't want that place to be the suck the life out of you corporate environment, but I also don't want the super chaotic mom and pop shop feel. You know, I think there's a happy medium there for restaurants where it's like, okay, we can be systematic and methodical and scientific, but also have a soul, you know, and really care about what we're doing, and our team can care about what we're doing. And I think we've achieved that at the place that we still own. But
that's cool.
We'll come back to that later. I guess, so.
Well, I mean,
way longer down the timeline.
Yeah. But I think, just to your point, speaking of that, it does seem, or I feel more of a gravitational pull just on everything now to the middle ground, you know, like, and that balance. It seems like a lot of us have operated in extremes and as a country for a long time. And I feel more of a magnet to the middle. You know, I think there's value in that. Side note, I've never ate at Red Lobster in my life. I don't know why. I dig seafood, and we used to have a Arby's in Colville, right when you come into town.
Crazy.
And that was my favorite fast food joint. I was super sad when they went out of business. Loved Arby's. But so you're at Red Lobster. What gets you out of Kentucky?
So I don't know. I'd saved up some money, and I don't know, I guess in my 20s, I was reading a lot of, you know, the classics and some of the beat writers. You know, I was reading a lot of Hemingway and some Jack Kerouac and stuff like that. And it got the travel bug in me, and I just really wanted to go see other places and live other places and experience just different things.
Ready for adventure.
Yeah. So I'd got it in my mind. A friend of mine did some time in the Coast Guard in Seattle. And he'd always talked about how great Seattle was at the time. This is 2005 or 6. And so I just decided that I was going to move to Seattle. Never even been to Seattle at the time. Never seen it. It wasn't like today where I guess it could have been. I mean, I guess I could have Googled it or whatever at the time. I don't know. I don't even know if Google search engine in 2006, I don't know what it was, but either way, I guess I could have Googled it or whatever, but I didn't, my buddy said it was a cool place. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go there. And it turns out he actually leaves there, and leaves the Coast Guard and ends up somewhere else. So I end up out here, I end up still saying I'm still going. It wasn't for him. It was just his, referral kind of that got me out here. But either way, I just decided I was moving to Seattle. I looked for work, and there were no GM positions with Red Lobster for me to transfer and make like a lateral movement. I would have had to have taken a step down. And it's like, look, if I'm going to take a step down, I'm not going to do it in the same company. I'm switching to a different company, and if I have to, step down anyway and just see what else is out there. And I enjoyed my time at Red Lobster in a lot of ways, but I mean, I at this age now, I wouldn't say I have a disdain for chains, but I mean, it's not my preference.
Yeah.
So, but at the time, if you were a restaurant manager, you wanted to move up, you needed to be in a corporate restaurant company.
Gotcha.
Like, that's what you needed to do. Financially, they had deeper pockets. They had more spots for you to move up to. So it just kind of made sense for me. And when I was looking out here, I flew out here for interviews. And I was here Seattle, rather. I flew out to Seattle for interviews. I was there for 3 days, maybe just to do a couple interviews. I got a GM position offer at like an Irish pub chain that I turned down. And I got a sort of fast track GM offer at the Cheesecake Factory in downtown Seattle. And so I took that job and flew out here and got an apartment at Sight Unseen. Just started working my way up at the Cheesecake Factory. Enjoyed that too. And again, it wasn't like, I don't know, I was more open to chains back then than I am now. But, and again, there's no like disdain for chains necessarily, even today. But either way, one thing that would impress me about the Cheesecake Factory was just that it was, they really did make everything in-house. It was wild. But ironically, the only thing they didn't make in-house was the cheesecake.
Okay.
So the cheesecake was made in California, frozen, and then shipped to you. But everything else was made in-house.
So this is going to be ignorant, but I've never been to Cheesecake Factory either. So do you just get cheesecake there, or are they selling off the menu food?
Oh yeah. So there's a menu that's this thick. I mean, it's just insane. And I forget how many menu items there are, like entrees, sandwiches, whatever. I got to say it's probably 100.
Wow.
It's insane. And so that was kind of their thing. It was like, we're going to have the biggest menu possible. We're going to have the biggest portions possible. But we're still going to make everything in-house.
Okay.
That was
except
their
for
thing.
the cheesecake.
Yeah, except for the cheesecake. Don't ask me why. I think it just came down to size of the kitchen that would be necessary to do that.
Yeah.
I think it's what it boiled down to. And it was a huge footprint. But doing that, that would have required a whole extra space, baking cheesecakes and freezing them and storing them. But either way, it was a cool operation. That restaurant there was doing $12 million a year in sales.
Wow. And
so a high volume restaurant is like $4 million.
Okay.
That's a high volume restaurant.
Yeah.
That's probably in the top 1% of restaurants. And they were doing 12 million a year. And it's just this huge footprint. I forget how many seats, but yeah, there was a guy that would come in every day. He was the sauce guy, and he would make he'd make a bunch of the 110 or whatever sauces it was. And that was his job. He literally had no other job except to make sauces because there were so many house-made sauces. It was crazy. And there was like a real focus on trying to deliver like a perfect dish. It was interesting. You, as a manager at the time, you had tasting notes for these sauces, and you had to know of all these sauces, you had to know what the beginning, middle, and finish tasting notes was of every sauce on the menu, basically. And it was insane. I mean, it was restaurant boot camp. And then when you're running the place, I mean, it's just this huge ship, and it just felt good to be the guy in charge that night of, there were probably 200 employees. In any given shift, on a busy shift, there might be 125 of them working, and you're the guy. And it's just orchestration. It's just a really cool orchestration.
And was there leadership and system dialed as far as to be able to bring people into that? And, you're taking a manager position, and you said it was like boot camp. So I'm envisioning like almost restaurant school. And I mean, did they have that really fine tuned to make that successful, for the leadership aspect of running a company that size?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, really their barriers to success was the same as every restaurant, but multiplied by the size of the place. And that is, so I don't know, any good idea is only going to be as good as the people you find to execute on that idea.
Yep.
And if I need 200 good people in the city of Seattle just for this one restaurant, that's a huge part of the restaurant labor market. I mean, I need a huge chunk of this labor market. Well, how do I get 200 good people, especially in a place like Seattle where the disdain for chains was 100% already a thing in 2006 when I got there. I mean, so a lot of the, your servers are going to be in their 20s mostly, and it's like, well, a lot of them are like, do I really want to work at the Cheesecake Factory? There's kind of like this sort of low status thinking behind the brand of the Cheesecake Factory, where they'd rather go work at, the cool, hip local place. And so it's tough when you need 200 people. And that's
how'd they do it?
I mean, you're hiring just crazy aggressively all the time.
And is there high attrition rate, like high turnover?
Pretty high turnover, yeah. I mean, I've seen worse. It was surprisingly low considering.
Yeah.
I'll say that. I mean, restaurant turnover was always high.
And is that turnover typically on the lower paying positions?
No, honestly, so the front of the house guys, they make minimum wage plus tips.
Okay.
But you can make a ton of money serving in a busy restaurant. Yeah. I mean, today I'll just convert it to today's dollars. I mean, servers in a busy restaurant working full time and bartenders can easily make $80,000 to $100,000 a year.
Wow.
Easy, no problem. In a city like Seattle, it's a slam dunk. If you're good at your job and you're a bartender in Seattle and you're not making $100,000 a year working full time, you're not doing it right.
And is that on 50 or 60K salary?
Oh no, it's just minimum wage plus tips.
So minimum wage is probably, is that 35 or 40 salary? Or annually, sorry. That you would make just in wages?
Good question. I'd have to do the math, but I mean, right now the wage is like $17 an hour, something like that, 16 and some change.
So that's a lot of tip money.
It's a lot
to get to 100K.
It's mostly tips.
Yeah, that's huge.
Mostly tips. Yeah.
Wow.
But it's totally doable. And servers too. I mean, busy restaurant in a dense city like Seattle. Yeah, you can make great money doing it. And
what about
that is where
the cooks?
Sorry, go ahead.
The cooks, are they getting a percentage of what the servers get?
Yeah, they do in most restaurants. Yeah, in most restaurants, even over there, a percentage of tip out goes to the kitchen and then to the bartenders and to the bussers or assistant waiters or whatever. So,
but is a guy in the back making 80 to 100? A
guy in the back, I would say, A guy in the back working full time's probably making more like 60 or 70.
Gotcha.
And that's sort of a roundabout way of answering your question. Is the turnover highest in the lowest paying positions? And the answer is no. In my experience, the turnover is highest in the front of the house where people make the most money, and the turnover is lowest in the kitchen. In my experience, where the guys, they're making a little less. Guys can still, if I'm in the kitchen and I want to work 50 hours a week, in greater Seattle, I can easily make 60 to 70, possibly even more. If you want to work some overtime, you could even get up to $80,000 as a cook in the Seattle market. It can be done.
So is the turnover up front with the higher paying position, is it correlated at all to maybe then like ego of then trying to chase grass is greener on the other side? If I can make 85 at Cheesecake Factory, then I go to a higher end restaurant and can make 120. Does that have anything to do with it, or is it burnout, or is it none of the above?
I think so. In the kitchen, the guys a lot of times are people with families. And so I've got kids to feed, you know, and it's like, so no, I'm not switching jobs every 3 months, and a lot of them have 2 jobs, and they'll cook somewhere in the morning and then cook somewhere at night. They work just tons of hours. But in the front of the house, a lot of times it's younger people, no children, maybe fewer bills. Maybe they have some roommates or whatever, so the rent isn't so high. So I think it just comes down to responsibility in the front of the house and these are all broad generalizations, so there's exceptions to every rule here, but generally speaking, your front of the house folks have less responsibility financially. And so they can, get burnt out and just be like, I'm good. I'm going to go find another job.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting. I'm learning so far in this conversation that, the world that I've lived in really has nothing to do with restaurant. I really like learning about a lot of different things, and I can be well versed in a handful of things that I know and that I've studied, but this is fascinating to me because business is fascinating to me. Right. And so to learn and understand how different sectors work I'm enjoying this. This is interesting. How long were you at Cheesecake Factory for?
So again, I was still reading, Kerouac, Hemingway, and Fitzgerald, and like a lot of the classics and beat writers, and so I still had the travel bug. And I decided by this time, I don't know when I decided it, but I decided that I wanted to go live in Europe for a year, and so I was only at Cheesecake Factory from like maybe 2006 to late 2008.
Okay.
And that was because, I was working my way up and things were going really well. I mean, if I'd stayed there, I'd be a GM for the Cheesecake Factory, maybe even to this day, just because once you get to that position, you can do really well in a restaurant making that much money. And GMs at the time got like a free BMW and it was just like,
wow.
Plus their salary and some, lots of other benefits. So it was like, had I gotten there, I mean, I don't know. It would have been hard to leave.
Might have put the golden handcuffs on.
Exactly. But I had decided I wanted to go to Europe, and I'd saved up a bunch of money, and I'd saved up like $30,000, and I bought a one-way ticket to Rome, Italy, and my girlfriend at the time, I asked her if she wanted to go with me. And she said yes. And so I was like, I'll cover it, and she came along, and we took the one-way flight to Rome, Italy. And the plan was basically spend a couple of months just roaming all over Western Europe, and then come back to Rome and settle in an apartment and find some work. And so that's what happened. Spent 2 months constantly in hotel rooms and on trains, which is exhausting, by the way.
I bet.
It's just you long to have a home. It's so cool. Obviously, you're seeing new cool stuff all the time, but you do miss having a place that you come back to. And this is my spot. This is where I live. At least I did. I think most people would probably feel that way as well after 2 months of it. But we got back to Rome after roaming around for a couple of months, and yeah, found an apartment under the table, kind of. No, not just kind of. Yeah, definitely under the table because, a tourist visa in Europe at the time, it was 90 days. And you can't like get an apartment to live in. You can't have like a year lease or whatever because you need to be gone in 90 days. But yeah, we found somebody who's willing to give us an apartment, and we paid cash for it. And then we both found jobs under the table, making cash as well. And what I did was kind of really out of my comfort zone. Like I was being in restaurants, dealing with people all the time. That's one thing. But I never felt like a salesperson. Sales was never something I really wanted to do. But when I was in Europe, the job I found was basically being a street solicitor, selling English guided tours of the Vatican Museum, Sistine Chapel, and Colosseum. And you're just out there in the streets, and you're selling English tours to people, and you make $0 if you sell 0 tours. And so, yeah, we did that. I did pretty well at it. I wasn't as good as a lot of other people were, just because I wouldn't lie to people,
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people out there who were just real devious with customers. They're like, "Oh, you can skip the line," which was true. But a lot of times there was no line, So, but they didn't know that.
Yeah.
It was like, and they're like, "Oh, well, how long's the line?" "Oh, it's an hour right now." And it's like, come on, guys. I mean, I'm going to tell you what I can sell you, and I'm going to be honest about it. And if that means I make less money, then so be it, I guess. Maybe it helped that I had some cash in the bank at the time, and I don't know. I guess maybe if I was like more desperate, who knows? But either way, I had my integrity, at least in that way, and I just, but yeah, I made decent money. Unfortunately, being in hotels and restaurants, because you're not making meals in your room, in the first 2 months of being on the road. You're not making meals, you're eating in restaurants, and you're paying for hotels, and it's 2 of us. And so that $30,000 went away real fast. I had some, but when we got back to Rome, but man, it put a huge dent in things, train tickets, all that stuff. So by the time I got to Rome, I had way less money than I thought I was going to have. And but fortunately, yeah, the gig, the street soliciting gig, was kind of cool, and there was this really cool. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking
you're good.
a lot, but
No, you're good.
But basically, there was this really cool group of kids. I say kids. I considered myself a kid at the time. I was 28, but I still felt like a kid, 100%. And they were kids to me too, but they were all in their 20s, some in their 30s, some even older. And what they would do is they would come every spring, and they'd live in Rome, and they'd do this job that I was doing. And then they'd leave every fall because slow season was wintertime. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to. And you sell nothing, you make nothing. So they'd leave, and a bunch of them would go to like Thailand, and just live on pennies in Thailand all winter, just chill on the beach, and then come back in the spring. And every year it was like this big reunion in the spring, and then this big farewell party in the fall. And it was just this cool community of people from everywhere, Eastern Europe, Australia, the United States, Canada. I mean, it was just this really cool group of people. Most of us there illegally, basically. Most of us working illegally, basically. And it was interesting, but they were all, I don't know. It was a fun group of people.
That sounds awesome.
It was cool.
I've had some people that have traveled there, and they talk about the food being better, like better ingredient wise. Example, like being able to eat a big pasta dish and not feel like they need to go curl up in a ball afterwards. Did you have a similar experience, or could you comment on the food?
So I guess I kind of ate whatever I wanted back in those days, and it wasn't until my like later 20s, I guess. So those were the late 20s, but even later 20s is when I really started to kind of pay attention to like what I was eating. at the time when I lived there, I'd eaten whatever I wanted my whole life, and continued to do so in Italy. So yeah, but I will say, I do think I felt better. I think part of that too was just my job was to be out roasting in the sun all day, and most of this, spring to fall, like it's pretty sunny and hot in Rome most of the time. And yeah, so yeah, sure, I'd go eat some pizza on a quick lunch break, or a sandwich, or like some fried arancini is what they're called, fried risotto balls, basically. Or potato croquettes. I mean, just starchy, like heavy food. Never felt like, I don't know, I never felt heavy afterwards.
Yeah.
But again, it was, I was, you eat it and then you're out, you're walking a bunch of miles and you're sweating. And so maybe I just burned it so fast. And I was also working out pretty hardcore at the time too. So I was burning it even after my shifts, and who knows? So I can't say, but I can say that I didn't feel like food coma or whatever, but I don't know what the cause of that would be.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So then do you come back to Seattle?
So I'm there for a year. My girlfriend and I split up over there. I don't know, things just went a little sour. I just I don't know. I think my, again, the downside of reading kind of Hemingway and Kerouac and all these guys is, there's the travel bug, but there's also like, they're kind of messy people, and so, in a lot of ways, particularly with women, they were messy people.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I had that same problem. I don't know if I had bad influences or who knows? I have no idea why, but nor does it matter. But yeah, I mean, things went south with that, and she flew back, and I stayed. And I stayed a few months there after she left, and was there for all in about 13 months. But then, I decided I needed to come back, and get back to the real world kind of, and get back to a career. So first I flew back to Louisville, actually. Well, I guess I flew back into the States, and then got to Louisville, and then eventually worked my way back to Seattle.
Gotcha.
So again, looking for jobs online and whatnot. Found something again in the restaurant industry, again with a company I wasn't really excited to work for, but this was the weirdest time for me. So 2009, when I came back, it's the Great Recession. And my resume was amazing, sorry, maybe that sounds conceited, but it was a great resume I had. And so I was used to just putting my resume out, and I'd get a call in 5 minutes. I mean, literally in 5 minutes, you're getting calls from restaurant recruiters who, hey, I've got this company, this company, this company, and I'm going to set you up with all of them.
And you kind of get to make your call.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was just, it was so easy. Well, I come back in 2009. I've now got a gap in my resume, 1 year, and it's the Great Recession. And I put my resume out, and for the first time in my life, it was crickets.
Whoa.
And it was just so creepy. It was just like, oh, okay. I got a little cocky here and just thought I could go live in Europe for a year and come back and just step right back in. No, it's a different world. I came back to a different world. And, there were worse financial crises in history, right? But that was pretty bad. It was pretty rough, the 2008, 2009 deal. So finally I got somebody interested. And I just took it. It was like, cool, I'm just going to take the job. I ended up being with Red Robin for a little while.
I ate there.
There you go. I was a manager there for a while, and working my way up there. And then by then I'd started to kind of lose my desire to work in chains. It was just like, you know what? I want to find a home, like a place where I'm proud of what we're putting on the table. And so I eventually came back to Seattle, got that job, and then left there and ended up at an Italian pizza restaurant, like a Neapolitan style pizza restaurant in Seattle. Place called Tutabella, Neapolitan Pizzeria.
And what does Neapolitan mean in the pizza scene?
Neapolitan, I think, is kind of like it's an American English translation of Napolitano, which is basically from Napoli.
Okay.
Or Naples, Italy.
So it's paying homage to that style of pizza.
Exactly, which is very different. All across Italy, you'll find all these different styles of pizza. There's Roman pizza. There's, Napoli pizza. There's all kinds of there's even the North Italian version, whatever you would call that. But having been in Naples, and then tasting the pizza at this pizzeria, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like nice. I ate that in Naples, and this is like really good, like it should be. So, and I actually lived down the road from this place. So, I knew it as a customer. I was actually a customer there, and I was like, you know what? I should look into this place, because never before did I ever go work for a place where I was actually a customer, like a place I wanted to go to myself. But yeah, I came on board there, got a general manager position there, worked my way up to director of operations eventually there. So I was overseeing 5 restaurants, there are 5 locations, and then had a good stay there. And we actually, as a company, were actually overseeing another restaurant that was not in the company. So we were actually just kind of playing as a management company for this other restaurant, this single unit company restaurant. And so I was overseeing the 5 Tutabella restaurants, and then we had this 6th restaurant that wasn't part of this company, but we were overseeing it, much of which fell on me as the director of operations. It was a super cool company. Both of them were super cool companies. But knowing the owners of this individual restaurant that we were overseeing, and I knew they were kind of, I don't know, struggling to, have a partner that they really jived with. And so I approached them eventually, just say, hey, what do you think about the idea of me running this place and being a partner? And lots of deliberations later, I end up buying in basically to this company, leaving the director of operations position and just being moving in as partner operator of this single unit tavern in Woodinville, Washington.
Is that like owning a share of the company, essentially stock in the company, becoming a partner?
Yep. So I started out owning, I came in and I owned 10% and was operating it. And then worked my way up in ownership and to some bought and some earned equity, and at the end was operating it and owning 50% of it.
That seems like pretty huge to go from 10 to a 50% owner.
Yeah, I mean it was, and it's in your I guess. So even just overseeing the restaurant before I bought in and started operating it myself, I mean, I think in the first year overseeing it, we doubled the profits, Then my first year of ownership doubled the profits again, And
so the proof was in the pudding.
Yeah. So we got to that 50% faster than I thought I was going to get there. Faster than any of us thought it was going to happen, but it happened quickly. And so I was running that place from 2018 to late fall of 2022. I was running that place myself and also as 50% owner, and that was a cool experience. And the only reason I decided to hire a general manager and have her run the day-to-day for me was so we could come out here and do this thing. So
a little bit of a side question, but when you become 10% shareholder, bought in, how do they come up with that valuation? Like, how does, and I don't need to know the specifics of the numbers, but like, how do they value that 10%?
So basically, you do a valuation for the whole company, and then find 10% of that number. The valuation for the whole company. I mean, there are different formulas, but the formula that I find most useful, and that I don't know, I see it as industry standard in a lot of ways. It's called 3x EBITDA,
Earnings before interest, tax, depreciation.
Yep.
Assets. Is that the A?
Yep.
Yeah.
Amortization.
Amortization. Yep. Correct.
So 3x, that number is a good valuation for a company that has a lot of potential.
Okay.
If you're a company that doesn't have a lot of potential, you might be lucky to get 2x. You might be lucky to get 1x. But if this company seemed to have potential and 3x seemed fair, and yeah, that means that in theory you get your money back in 3 years. Of course, if you do some capital expenditures or whatever, that happens below EBITDA. So then you're not going to get your money back in 3 years. Then maybe it's 3.5 or whatever, depending on the size of the capital expenditure. But that's a pretty good valuation formula that I find most people can agree on.
Do you have to come up with that 10% up front?
Fortunately, I was able to get a loan basically.
That's what my next question would be, is so you can finance that piece.
It's basically financing a business purchase. Yeah.
Yep. So, gotcha.
Yeah, but you're just purchasing 10% instead of the whole company.
And can you do that through programs like SBA and stuff, or does it have to be private or commercialized lending?
I'm not sure, because I did personal myself. Yep. So I'm not sure if you can. I think if you wanted to buy like 10% of a company, I think with the SBA is what the whole group would have to kind of be in on it.
Yeah, and then that would make sense.
They would finance the whole value of the company or whatever. And then redo the LLC agreement if there's an LLC or whatever, or S corp or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't think you can really get an SBA loan for like a partial business, because I mean because if the SBA if you default, well, the SBA, how are they going to get 10%?
10% don't make sense. Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. What are you doing in those first 2 years to continue to double profits?
Honestly, I think just really focusing on food quality, service, and just operational efficiency. There was just a lot of, I don't know, this is true for a lot of restaurants. And that's just, I don't know. I think they don't always approach things like scientifically or mathematically or even like logically. I think it's just like, well, we do this because it's what we've always done. Yep. And this is how we do this because it's always done there. We do this because we like to do this.
It's not very systematic.
Yeah. And so, one of my strengths is being systematic and really like putting things through the test. Is like, does this actually make sense? Mm-hmm. What's the ROI on this? Yeah. What's the opportunity cost of this? And how can does it even make sense to do this? Is this doing more harm than good? Just things like that. And just really being honest, like taking all your emotions out of it. Yep. And just really just getting down to the brass tacks and just really everything. There are no sacred cows here. Yeah. What are we doing, and what do we need to be doing, and what do we not need to be doing?
And so were you seeing a positive ROI on food quality? Like, what were you seeing and dabbling in that actually produced a good return for you?
I think we were seeing the increase in guest counts. We were seeing the increase in check averages, people buying more things when they're there
But correlated to the quality of food? Or was it dining experience mixed, or
that's the tough thing, and that's the tough thing is when you're talking about food quality, like, well, what's driving our increase? Is it food quality? It's like, these are pretty subjective things, and hard to measure, not subjective so much.
Maybe that's what I'm more trying to ask is can you measure where you're getting the return at?
A lot of the absolute measurable stuff that helped us was, okay, like maybe that we were doing this add-on, for example. Okay, we're going to add, people can add a piece of salmon to their salad for $6. And it was just like, what does that piece of salmon cost you? You know, and then something that simple is just like, you can't do that. You know, this makes no sense. And so, okay, we need to either not do it or we need to raise the price. And it's real simple stuff like that. That's super measurable things that we did was basically menu engineering.
Yep.
100% easily measurable. That was a huge piece of the puzzle. The other huge piece of the puzzle was just labor efficiency. And it wasn't even so much that we were like, you know, cutting labor costs as much as we were just using it smarter, you know? So, okay, you know, maybe we can even use the same amount of hours and dollars, but instead of having like a bunch of people on a Tuesday when they're not busy, we add that back into Friday when we're on a wait. And now we're turning tables faster. Yeah. And we're getting more covers, you know, as opposed to just little stuff like that. So those are the really easily measurable things. You can look back and say, this worked. And this is probably about how much money we got off of it. Yeah. When it comes to food quality and when it comes to service and hospitality, those are super hard to measure unless you have some sort of guest feedback system where you can look and say your guests are scoring you on these things. And you can look and say, okay, cool, where our scores are going up in these areas. We didn't have that. I love the value of those things. I hate the feel of it.
Yeah, it's kind of an inconvenience. Like if I'm going out to eat, I don't want to do a customer survey afterwards. Yeah. But can't you kind of feel it in the energy of the room? Like the dining experience, the hospitality, like you can kind of read a room, right? And see if people are enjoying their time there.
100%. Yeah. And that's the value of having, you know, a really good operator, because there are things that cannot be measured and your operator has to know these things intuitively. Yep. And a lot of them can't, you know? So, yes, the vibes of the room, our guests happy right now. And also, yeah, the food quality, like there's really, if you don't have a guest feedback system, there's not a lot of ways to measure that. But are you, when you see something that's sat in the window for, you know, 2-3 minutes, you're like, nope, redo it. Yeah. We can't sell that. It's been here too long. Or that egg isn't perfect, or these fries are cold, or, you know, whatever, just like super simple stuff like that you really can't measure, but you know you've changed the game because you're constantly like driving performance there. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I just lost my train of thought. There was one more question I was going to ask you on that front. Shoot. Give me 1 minute here. I'm blanking. No worries. And we're going to have to come back.
No worries. I'm sure it'll come back to you later.
I'm blanking on it a little bit. Shoot. Well, it was right on the tip of my tongue. Anyways, so you work your way up to 50%, and then 2020-ish, how do you find Kettle Falls?
Yeah, so 2020-ish, yeah, that's when we purchased property out here. The way I found Kettle Falls was, actually, I guess it was a few years earlier. So I decided I wanted to get into hunting. So let's see here. I started paying attention to the food I was eating more so in, like I said, my late 20s, early 30s.
How come?
I got into, I've worked out most of my life. There were a few years in my late teens and early 20s where I was definitely partying too hard and not, even though I was working 56 hours a week, also partying too hard, not working out. But the majority of my life, otherwise, I was lifting weights or working out in some way from, my early teenage years till today. And so, but in my late 20s, early 30s, I got into, I guess, more, my workouts became less weightlifting centric and more like fitness centric. So there was still a lot of weightlifting to it, but it wasn't just hey, go to the gym and do some bench press.
Yeah.
You know,
More functional strength training.
functional movements. Yeah. Like, and so, and I got into, actually, I started going to a CrossFit gym in my late 20s.
Yep.
And then did that. Actually, for a little while, I was a CrossFit instructor in my 30s at some point on the side, running restaurants and doing CrossFit instruction. But that got me thinking more about food, like what I was eating.
Yeah.
Which led to me thinking about, okay, well, not what am I eating, but where did it come from? And which led me to, hey, what about like learning to hunt my own food? And so I think my grandpa did some like tree stand hunting in Kentucky, but I was never exposed to that.
Yeah.
My dad didn't hunt. And I don't know that I was never exposed to hunting, basically. So here I am in Seattle, and who's going to teach me? I mean, it's hard. Yeah, I don't know. Watching YouTube, learning to hunt, watching YouTube. I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, you could, but it's more just you got to get the reps in. Just do it. But field dressing an animal is a very intimidating thing if you've never done it before. And so that was the intimidation. It's like, well, what if I get something like I've never dressed it. I've never gutted, skinned, and quartered an animal before. Am I going to like watch YouTube and be able to do this? I don't know. So somehow I found this hunting course out here in Rice, and it's called Human Nature Hunting.
Is Charlie a part of that?
I don't think so. It's Bruce McGlynn is the guy.
Okay.
He leads the course, and it's on their property. And so I signed up for this hunting course, and you go there, and it's like from a Thursday to Sunday, I think. And you basically learn a lot of these hunting skills. There's a lot of like sort of, like there's a blood trail that's created, and you learn how to follow that, and you kind of talk stalking and glassing methods. But also what they do is they get a lamb, or at least at the time, I don't know how much the course has changed since then, but they would get a lamb, and they would basically field dress the lamb as a group.
Okay.
And so you field dress the lamb as a group. So everybody's going to experience field dressing. And then you eat that lamb the rest of the week. There's actually a cook or a chef there making meals with all this lamb. And you're just camping on the property. And yeah, you're learning how to field dress. You're learning, okay, here's how to use maps. Here's your compass. And here, let's do this blood trail and see how you guys do. Let's let's do a little shooting. Let's do some bow shooting. It's just like intro to hunting.
Yeah.
I don't know if Bruce would appreciate this, but I call it I've referred to it sometimes as the hippie hunting class.
Okay.
And in a way, because the classes started off it's this group meditation, and it was really cool. It was like, you really did just kind of become really aware of everything around you, like every tiny little noise and like every slight change in the wind. And it's, I assume it's meant to do this, but it kind of did mimic that mindset you get in. I don't know if you hunt, but it did kind of mimic that mindset you can get into when you're hunting, and just how crazy aware of you are of everything going on around you. Yeah. As opposed to, you're just like, well, I'm walking on my property all the time outside, and I don't notice hardly anything,
Yeah.
like
it's
I'm
like
just,
when you hunt, you
here.
get like spidey senses, right?
Yes.
You can hear you can even feel presence like before you see it. It's unless you've done it, it's a hard thing to really put your thumb on. But like you said, every little breaking of a pine needle, or, you can hear a chipmunk, which you would never notice a chipmunk on your property, and it's, and I'm, just to be transparent, I hunt. I no way would identify as a hunter. Like it's something that I've actually, I did when I was a young kid, and wasn't really for me. My dad had hunted and my brother hunted, and they continued to hunt during my childhood. Wasn't for me. And then similar in the last 4 to 5 years, started caring more about where my food came from, and actually picked it up again at 30, and have hunted the last 4 or 5 years. And I feel guilty and a little dumb, growing up here with all my friends hunt in this area. But just getting back into it recently, I enjoy it, man. And there's, I resonate with a lot of, with what you're saying. I had no idea that we taught hunting here. That's new on me. I learn something new every day.
Yeah, you should check it out. Honestly, yeah, look up human nature hunting,
Yeah.
and it's just a really cool class. And Bruce is just he's just been doing it so long. He's just a pro and a great teacher, and really for him, it's about where food comes from and just like sort of the tradition of hunting. You know, just like the how this was really like. I mean, not too long ago in history, that was how you ate,
So it's almost in our DNA, right? When you go out and harvest an animal with the intent to put food on your table, like you kind of feel this primal feeling. And I think that must be some kind of a dopamine release or something, because there's a feeling you get doing that I haven't been able to mimic outside of that. And it's a very gratifying endeavor to be part of the full circle thing, because it's hard too, you know. And you can't, I mean, I guess you can be kind of a dink and go and harvest something, but to do it the right way and with respect, and to be like an outdoorsman and what am I trying to say? I'm blanking on the word again, but doing it the right way, essentially. Like there's a lot that goes into it. You don't get to just show up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what Bruce is focused on. He's really the spirit of hunting more than just like, hey, it's not, driving on a road and parking and just shooting something 5 steps from the road. You know, it's about the full experience and what it means. But either way, that was my first time coming to Stevens County.
Okay.
Or anywhere near Stevens County, to be honest with you. You think when you're in Western Washington, you think of Eastern Washington as Ellensburg, or
I've heard that
Yakima,
before. Yeah.
and it's so weird. I was guilty of it because it's like, yeah, of course, Ellensburg, Yakima, Leavenworth, whatever. That's Eastern Washington. This place, this area, Stevens County, Ponderay, there for a lot of Western Washingtonians, it's just not even. It doesn't even exist.
Yeah,
and it's wild. And so I had no idea that this landscape existed in Washington until I did that course, and I fell in love with the place. And strangely enough, we are in Rice. Yeah, we live in Rice, so we're not too far away from where that course happened. But yeah, so that's how I fell in love with this area and was like, man, and I just loved my time out here. It was just like, gosh, it's so beautiful and it's so quiet. And it's just a different world culturally. It's just so different than kind of the rat race of the city. And like, man, I'd really love to buy some property out here and just spend some more time out here. Even if we got something really small, like a vacation, tiny thing or whatever, and just spend more time out here with nature and just kind of hanging out, whatever. So that's where I got the idea. And I looked at property for years after that course, but could never get my wife sold on it, and she'd never been out here either.
Okay.
But 2020 was where we fell out of love with the city in a lot of ways. And not even necessarily the city itself, but just cities, and it was just, it was wild over there. And I finally got her to come out here, and I was like, let's just go and just look at a couple properties. And she'd never been out here either. She comes with me and she's like, okay, it's pretty cool,
Yeah, for sure.
And then it wasn't long after that, like we were here. We came back out another trip, like on the fly, because there was this other property that we found that we didn't look at on our first time, and we said that's the one, and we bought it, and then immediately started plans to build on it. And again, the plan then was just to spend more time out here. Maybe I would not step away from the tavern fully, the tavern that we bought into, or maybe I wouldn't step away fully. Maybe I would just, take more time off and, pay somebody to help me take more time off so I could just come out here and spend time. But the more and more we fell out of love with the city, the more we were like, you know what, maybe we should just move out there and find somebody to run the day to day of the tavern. I'll still be involved, remotely and on quarterly visits or whatever. And yeah, she was convinced that, hey, yeah, we can. Let's move out there. We'll figure it out. What that looked like, we didn't really know at the time. I don't think. I mean, we were like, yeah, we'll get some animals, whatever. But at some point, it just, I don't know when it happened, but at some point, it was like, well, I can't just sit out here and hope that the tavern supports us, without getting a job or doing something. I was like, I can't do that. Like, I'm not wired that way. So it was like, okay, maybe this needs to be a business. Maybe we should just try to start a ranch. And I don't know, it sounds crazy, and it was and is crazy in many ways, but we did it. I drew up all the plans for the fencing and all the outbuildings, and really came up with a way for, how we were going to do everything on paper, and talked to a bunch of contractors. And it was like a lot of people do things out here themselves. And I do some stuff myself, but when it came to like getting out here and getting started, I didn't want to get started 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. I wanted to come out here and I wanted to hit the ground running. And to do that, I really had to rely on some contractors. I mean, we had our house built, and I was the GC, even though I'm not a GC, from 6 hours away, and that was rough, but yeah, planning, fencing, and buildings and all that stuff, did that, and decided on sheep as a starter, just because leaving that course actually reminded me how much I loved lamb. And actually, after I did leave that course, not only did I get into hunting as planned, but I also started buying whole lambs from a farm north of us in Seattle. And I would go up to this farmer's house, and basically he'd have a lamb ready for me, and I'd let him slaughter it. He'd, dispatch the animal humanely, and then I'd take it, and then I would gut it, skin it, quarter it, and then I would take it home and pack it for the freezer, basically butcher it and pack it for the freezer. And I would do that ever so often, just, every time we run out, I'd go get another one. And it was like kind of like field dressing practice, but also knowing where my food came from. And that's kind of how I went from paying attention to what I eat to paying attention to where what I'm eating came from, to trying to hunt my own food, to kind of admiring this guy out here raising his own food who I was buying lambs from. And then, and that's kind of how we got this idea of raising sheep. And that was the first idea of livestock, basically, that we had for the ranch.
How much time had you put in to like researching the business side of that? Right. Cause like, it sounds like a good, like little house on the prairie sounds fun, right? Mm-hmm. Come up and it's a beautiful area, and you build a house and do the thing. But I also heard you say that you were, looking for, something to not just be dependent on your one source of income in the tavern. And you seem, in the hour and a half that I've known you, like a very calculated individual. So did you go out with and say, hey, we're going to do sheep and get into this on a whim? Or had you ran numbers or done market research, or like, what was that process like? Because it seems like on my side of the table, that would be somewhat terrifying to come in and buy the property, invest in the house and the fencing and the outbuildings and all this stuff. There's a lot of time and money that passes before you see a dime. Oh, yeah. And so walk me through that thought process a little bit.
So when it came to the financial side of the ranch plan, I mostly focused my research from 2020 to 2022 when we first got out here, late fall. most of my research then was on more of like operations, less about finances and more about operations. And the reason for that was just because I will find the way this works financially, period. I will. Like, I show me a profit and loss statement and show me the business, and I will find a way to make it work. You know, if it's a viable business,
Okay.
at all. But the operational side of ranching, I had zero knowledge there. Zero. My grandpa raised hogs growing up, but I had almost no exposure to that. So my parents we grew our own food, but we didn't raise animals. So, so I focused my first few years was basically on the operations and just had the faith that like, I mean, I did crunch some numbers, but it wasn't super official like it would be for a restaurant.
Yeah.
Like on a restaurant, I'd have a pro forma and I'd build it and I'd say, this is what it looks like. Without having that much experience in ranching, or zero experience in ranching, I felt like, you know, putting together a pro forma is, what's it worth?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's kind of worthless coming from me, who's never done it before.
Yeah.
And I realized that. So I kind of worked backwards, which is not at all my default setting, but kind of worked backwards and just said, I think we can do this. Let's learn the operations. And I researched like crazy, all the operational stuff. I did research a lot of the financial stuff too, but yeah, I didn't sit down and like draw it out and say, this is how this is going to be financially viable. Exactly. It was just super rough sketch on that front. And basically, you know, the hardest part was this. I mean, when we got here and we got our first livestock in late 2022, I mean, we didn't even know if we were going to be able to find a USDA processor for our animals. And without a USDA processor, you can't sell retail cuts to anyone legally. I can sell you a whole animal or a half animal, and that's it. I can't sell a ribeye steak unless I find a USDA processor. And so legally, and I mean, there was just so much that we couldn't learn and plan until we really got here.
Yeah.
So once we got here in fall of 2022 and we're getting our first livestock and then we're growing and growing and growing livestock wise, as we're doing this, we're kind of like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Okay, wait, we're going to do this. And it just kind of changed as the landscape changed. We had a processor eyeballed for, you know, some of our animals. Turns out we didn't like that option. We tried it, you know, and we're like, okay, that doesn't work. So now it's been a game of like, definitely there's the plan, but I have to say, there's been a whole lot of modifications just based on what can be done. It's not like a restaurant. It's like in a restaurant, you're going to build the space out. You're going to write the menu. You're going to staff it. And everything happens in those four walls. Everything. On the ranch side, I raise the animals, but I got to depend on so many other people. Like the processor, I have to rely so heavily on the processor. It's almost like we're business partners, except we're not.
Yeah.
and it's wild. It's a really vulnerable position as from a ranch business owner. You really have to. It's a trial and error to find who you like, and choose who you want to partner with.
Will you do your best to define the processor and its role in your operation as like if I'm a fourth grader sitting here?
Yeah. So basically, to sell an animal legally, I have to, like, in fact, the lambs I was buying from that farmer, that was fully illegal.
Yeah.
100% illegal. So to legally sell you meat, I have to either have a WSDA butcher and slaughterer.
W Washington?
Yep.
Okay.
Or a USDA butcher and slaughterer.
One or the other.
Yep.
Okay.
WSDA, if they're only WSDA, then I can only sell you a half or whole animal. I can't sell you a ribeye steak, period.
That's USDA only?
Yep.
Okay.
So if I want to sell you ribeye steak or a rack of lamb or lamb chops, I need a USDA processor. There's only, I don't know, maybe 10 in the whole state. Maybe 10 USDA processors in the whole state. You can go to this, don't quote me on that, but yeah, you can go to the USDA website and look Washington. It's like 10-ish. Tiny number of those USDA processors, the slaughterers and the butchers. A ton of those don't even do lamb because economically it's just so much better for them to do beef, cows. And so they're just like, no, we don't do lamb. So now I've got a livestock and I'm just, trying to find this out. My 2020 to 2022 was focused largely on operations, not like, and yeah, I did try to find all this stuff out, but it was just so hard to do that and also build our house and plan our fencing and all that. So, and plan our outbidding. So once we got here, then it was like, okay, we need to find a USDA processor. And it seemed like a slam dunk in the beginning, but then it's like, okay, well, just because they're USDA doesn't mean we want to use them. This is like our whole reputation is in the hands of the skill level of these butchers and slaughterers.
Because you're putting all your time, money, and effort into this animal, and then you can ruin that in the next step very quickly, and then that becomes a reflection of your product.
Exactly.
And so that's when you said earlier that it's like we're in business, but we're not.
Exactly.
There's a lot of trust in that relationship.
Yep.
How close is your processor, miles-wise?
So we decided to partner with, after lots and lots of, using different ones and deciding who we want to use. We partner with beef. We do limit bid packing in Odessa. How many miles? Don't know. It's 2 hours.
Yeah, for sure.
It's 2 hours driving from our place. And then for lamb, we've partnered with Double S Meats and Tenasket.
Okay.
And they're also 2 hours away, basically.
So does that process, once you get an animal to finish, are you then trailering them down to Odessa if it's beef? And then are you going back down to get the final wrapped product?
Yep.
Okay. And then you bring that back, and then like you've got a fridge at Redbridge Farms, or you're also running a retail site online. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. And so then do you have freezer space then at your ranch, and do you guys ship from there, or do you drop ship from Odessa?
We ship from, we got to take everything away from Odessa and Tenasket when they're done with it, and then store it all. And all of our shipping, we would have to ship it from our commercially inspected, basically, freezer space and Redbridge farm.
Okay.
Mill and feed store. So that's another thing. I technically can't have a ribeye steak in my freezer at my house and sell it to you. I need to have that in a freezer in a commercial space that is inspected by the health department. And I have to pay license or permits and all that stuff. So, I mean, it's an incredibly cumbersome process to make sure that you're selling meat legally.
But you can sell, like I've been on your website and the different cut and wrap packages you have, you can sell that online. But if I want a steak for dinner tonight, I can only get that from Redbridge. Am I understanding that correctly?
You can get it from me, but I'm just going to go to Redbridge and get it out the freezer and then sell it to you.
Okay.
So you can buy direct from the ranch, but it's still all coming from that storage area. The difference of buying it direct from the ranch is there's no markup on it. Yeah. So it's a little cheaper. And basically, I could still meet you at the ranch, because I can pick it up at Redbridge on my way home one day and then, hey, come by the ranch, whatever. So it's, it's all coming from the same storage area, basically, to be legal. But if you buy direct from me, you're going to get ranch direct pricing. If you buy from Redbridge, you're going to pay a little bit of markup for obvious reasons.
How much bullshit is there in becoming USDA certified? Like, is that on your radar at all? Would you ever entertain having that credential to keep everything in house?
We actually, and I'm so glad it didn't work out, we actually looked at buying a slaughter butcher house, the real estate and the business. And it was overpriced, and thank goodness it was overpriced, because I'm just so glad we didn't do it. It would give us the control we want, yes, but I don't think we can have the ranch and also operate a slaughter and butcher house unless we'd have to rely on so many more employees. And so then it's like, okay, well, if you're having to rely on that many more employees in a town where, to be honest, it's, it's a tight labor market.
Yeah.
Do I really have control then? Maybe not.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And so we walked away from that possibility for many, many good reasons. And yeah, I think, the USDA certification, the wild thing is, so if you want to be a USDA processor, you have to have an office in there for the USDA inspector. That you have your own USDA inspector that is basically setting up shop in your slaughterhouse, butcher house. And you have to have an office room dedicated just for them. They're basically an employee almost. Yeah, except they're your boss. Wow. Basically. It's intense. It's intense to be USDA, and that's why so many WSDA places are like, no, we're good. We're just going to be WSDA. So that was the most stressful, one of the most stressful things. And one of the things that took us the longest to kind of get mapped out. Who are the USDA processors we can use? Who do we want to use?
Yeah.
And, there for a while, there was this idea of like, oh, we can have these USDA mobile slaughter units, and they'll come to your property, and then they'll slaughter your animal, and then they'll take it to the USDA butcher house. And then you've got this USDA animal that was never, that was slaughtered on site, which we love, but there's just no way it can't be done. There's just, the number of trucks and drivers and slaughterers you'd have to make that a readily available resource. It can't be scaled, basically. And so it's kind of not a thing. It's not just kind of not, it's not a thing. At least out here, there's no USDA mobile slaughter unit out here. It's just not happening.
There's a tremendous amount of trust you're putting in to that next phase. That's a fascinating part of your business.
Yeah. And we've been really happy though. Limit Bid Packing did an awesome job with our beef last year. Double S Meats in Tonasket, they did an awesome job with our lamb. And, it's sure, we gotta haul them over there, but 2 hours is not bad. Most of what you get at the grocery store was hauled 10 hours, or even more than that. It's there's some super long hauls for those animals. I get them there in pretty short time, and it's I feel good about it.
How do you forecast? Like, how do you know how many animals to raise? And is it seasonally? Is it monthly? Like, how does that work?
So we harvest beef once a year in November.
And how do you know how many to raise?
Well, this year is kind of the tipping point for us. I think where we just decide after this year. So our first year, we only did 4 cows. That was it. Second year, we did 8. And then this year, we're doing 12. So we just kind of increased steadily. The question this year is like, okay, is 12 the number? Does it need to be higher? I'm open to it if it needs to be lower. It just kind of depends. So I think 8 last year, I think that's a solid number, but it really just depends on a lot of how this year goes. And this year, will largely depend on how things go at the farmer's market and how much we ship to other places. Cause now we ship, beef and lamb to, Eastern Washington and the Idaho Panhandle. They're decent sized boxes, so it's not for everybody. It's like a 30 something pound box of meat. So you still have to have a little bit of freezer space, but yeah, we'll see this year how that goes.
How much do you anticipate of your beef using yourself and selling at the farmer's market and via the food truck versus selling to customers? Did that make sense? Like
one more time.
So you're going to use your own beef at the farmer's market and in the food truck, but then you also sell beef to the house, to families that are buying beef. What's the split of the beef that you use versus that you sell outside?
So the beef we sell, the cuts, like the retail cuts, split to the prepared foods out of the food trailer split is basically what you're asking, right?
Yes.
So yeah, good question. Last year, I mean, I think last year we were going through, not a ton because we were just doing sliders. We were doing beef sliders. We were probably only going through, I don't know, maybe 10 pounds of beef a week or something like that, which is a lot of sliders to be fair, but it's not a ton of meat. And yeah, there's probably 26 weeks of the market, give or take, something like that. So, and then, yeah, so we had, I'd say last year, if I had to guess, only maybe 15% of our beef was used in prepared foods last year. And then probably 85% was sold as either half cows or whole cows or retail cuts. And this year, I do expect that to change. Last year we were just basically throwing up a canopy and a griddle, like a patio griddle, and making sliders, and it was super popular. But what we hope is with the food trailer this year that we get a little bit more traction on our prepared foods, and we do hope to see our prepared foods percentages go up. The reason, it's really the whole intention, on a retail cut of meat, frozen retail cut of meat, we make so little money. The margins are just crazy thin. And so the idea of the food trailer, one, we're food service people, so we enjoy it. And it's a great way to introduce people to our product in a prepared format. So, but also our margins are a little better, granted, you have to take out your labor in some ways. But in a lot of ways, we don't take out our labor because we're going to be at the farmer's market anyway. Yeah. Right. So it's like, I'm going to be here selling you cuts or trying to get you to buy a half or a whole cow or a whole lamb.
Part of doing business.
I might as well just add a little bit more food prep and, equipment or whatever, and maybe get more people on the hook for buying our beef or lamb. So
I don't mean to sound ignorant in saying this, but like 12 beef doesn't sound, I was expecting more volume. Am I when I think of ranch and, what you're doing business model wise, I got like probably at least 100 in my head or more.
We are 100% a micro ranch, and there are many reasons for that. One, so when it comes to beef specifically, like we did 8 last year. We sold some halves. I don't think we sold any whole cows last year. We sold some halves. But from those 8, we still have about 3,000, maybe 3,200 pounds of beef in retail cuts that we'll be selling at the farmer's market this year, either as retail cuts, or we'll be selling them as burgers or tacos or whatever out of the food trailer. So it doesn't sound like, 8 cows last year doesn't sound like a lot. But when you say I need to move 3,200 pounds of beef in 1 year just out of the Colville Farmers Market or shipping, and you're like, okay, that's a lot of beef to move. And so while the cow number sounds small, the beef poundage is pretty high. And this year 12 is going to be even higher. So we're just trying to grow responsibly. I think the reason there's, like I said, there's many reasons it's small. Our head count cow wise is small. One of those reasons is because, we have to store all that beef. So storing 3,200 pounds of beef is a ton of space. We got to rent the space. We got to buy the freezers. So there's a lot of costs. So the more we grow, the more cost. The other thing is we don't raise cows and sell cows. So if I was going to raise cows and sell cows, I might have 100 because it's like, cool, I'll use what I need for beef. Everybody else is going to the sale barn, and we'll just take the profits on whatever, the sale barn price is. But we're not really in the business of selling cows as livestock. So, so I think the only people who have, say, like 100 head of cows and it's all for beef, they're not selling any at the sale barns. those people have big accounts with feedlots.
Yep.
And so what they're doing is they're selling all their head to a feedlot, and then that company or the person who's taking them to the feedlot has a deal with another big like processor or whatever, and then that person has a deal with the distributor. And so for us, as we're direct to consumer, so we are the rancher and we are the frontline sales team. And so trying to do that with 100 head of cattle, it's just not feasible.
Yeah.
those bigger numbers. Yeah. There's this whole chain. Even down the road from us, there's a guy, he's probably 100 head he sells to the feedlot folks every year.
Well, it makes sense to me. And I think even what I'm grasping too is that there's two sides of that fence, and to your point, there's the one side where it's, you're raising the animal, but then you're selling it to a bigger packer. And that's not your mission statement. That's not what you're trying to do at all. You're trying to do really farm to table. And I think that can be a gray area, with me as the consumer of saying, yeah, I want to eat local beef, and well, I know a guy, but it doesn't really, there's not a lot of people actually doing what you're doing here. They're just raising quantity of animal and shipping that off. So that makes sense to me now. I don't know much about the beef industry, but I get what you're laying down. And when you say we're a micro ranch or farm, I'm picking up there. What are your sheep numbers?
One thing more on that, what you're mentioning. So not only do those big, even the feedlot guy, he's not buying freezers and renting freezer space. His beef is getting purchased by McDonald Meat distributor in Seattle.
So
they've got a huge freezer warehouse. And so he doesn't have to pay any of that stuff. The distributor is buying his beef outright and then just throwing it in their huge warehouse freezer.
And so I guess even what I'm maybe trying to say more bluntly is if a cow leaves here, it's not always a feel good story. We want to believe it maybe is, it's still contributing to, and maybe problem isn't the right word for everyone, but it's something that more people are becoming in tune with, right? There's a movement with feedlots and animal cruelty and antibiotics and, all the things. So I track what you're saying.
Yeah, and and my it's not my place to tell anybody what they should like or shouldn't like as far as hey, if what you can afford is a steak at Walmart from wherever, then and that's what you want, then you do you. That's fine. My job is just to tell you what's special about our product and what makes it great and way better in my opinion. And a lot of other people's opinion, but I don't judge anybody for saying, hey, it's not for me. Yeah. I'm fine with this, or I can't even afford what you have. I got to do this. That's fine. I never want to come across as snobby about what we sell. But I'm super proud of it. Yeah. I hope that never comes across as snobby. I mean, the interesting thing is that McDonald Meat in Seattle, that distributor, they're selling to all the restaurants and the grocery stores then. And then you go buy it. I mean, so the difference is like you're saying, there's these 100 head cattle herds. There's 5 guys between you and that cow. And when you buy from me, it's just me and the processor. Yeah. That's it. And there's, the animal's not changing hands a ton of times, and the meat's not changing hands a ton of times. It's just, and when you talk to me about our beef, I know it super well. I know it like the back of my hand. I was with that animal all year, or however long. So, but either way, I mean, it's crazy when you think about, beef and what we're doing. I mean, our break-even point on beef, for example, the most expensive ground beef at the grocery store anywhere in Colville or even anywhere near here is cheaper than my break-even point on a pound of beef. It might be a little hard to follow, but basically, let's say whatever the most expensive ground beef in the store is, if I tried to sell you ground beef for that price, I'd be doing it at a loss. And that's not even including labor and infrastructure costs. That's just counting stock costs, feed costs, processing costs. Add in labor and infrastructure, and it's just a totally different ballgame. So we're in a different thing. We just have to hope that enough people, one, can afford what we offer, but also care. I think there's this thought that it's almost everybody who thinks, yeah, we need more small farms. We need more small farms. Like almost everyone thinks that now. You'd be probably hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't feel that way. But I don't know that everybody knows what they're asking for.
I also think that it's this like really, really tough crossroads. And I think that you're talking about it on both sides and you're well spoken, but like, it's the issue, right? It's the elephant in the room that even if you do care, can you afford it? And that's the elephant in the room. I think that's what a lot of Americans are feeling. I think that's what a lot of small town people are feeling right now. We love to sit here and talk about supporting local and small business and the whole thing, but you can't work for free. I can't work for free. Mm-hmm. And then also you can't want something so bad and then break your house, right? And not put food on the table or the auto insurance or the car payment. And also I'm not throwing shade at anyone locally here that does raise the large heads of cattle. Like we're all doing business, right? And you got to do that, and it's important. And it's just I think that's a real tough intersection that maybe hasn't always been a crossroads. I think when we think, and I'm just speaking for myself, but when I think of 50, 60 years ago, small business and like going to the butcher shop, right? Like in a black and white movie, and the name of the butcher, and he got the cow from Joe down the street, and like those days don't really exist anymore. The money isn't there on either end. It's for the Main Street guy to be able to buy from Joe and have his cow there's lots of issues there. And then if you can do that, then average Joe can't come in and afford it. And that's our reality right now on a lot of things. That's tough waters to navigate.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing that if you went today and you wanted to buy a yearling cow at 600, 700 pounds at the sale barn, it's going to cost you about $2,000. Your butcher costs are going to cost another probably $1,000, maybe $1,200. We'll say $1,000 for easy math. That's $3,000 you're into this cow. It's a yearling. You need to feed that thing for another 6 to 12 months to get it to 18 to 24 months on most breeds. So let's assume you can just feed this thing for free after it's a yearling, which you can't, but let's assume you could just for easy math. That's $3,000. You're going to get 400 pounds of take home meat off this cow. That, let's see here, 400 pounds of meat, $3,000. What are we at? $7.50 a pound, basically, of take home, right? Yeah, $7.50 a pound. It cost you to get a pound of meat, and you went to the sale barn and you bought that thing yourself. You paid the butcher slaughter yourself, and we're not even counting any of the cost you had to pay to feed the animal, which if there's winter, you'll have to feed it, even if you're not grain finishing. So it's just like
the math doesn't math.
Yeah, you're thinking, people go to the grocery store and they're thinking, gosh, everything's so expensive. And you're like, no. The person, like Walmart's profit margin, net margin is like 1-2%. Like it only works because they're selling billions.
Because it's Walmart.
Billions of dollars worldwide. Well, 1% of billions of dollars worldwide, that's a lot of money.
Small business doesn't stay alive on 1% margin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's just crazy that you can buy beef cheaper at Walmart than you can buy a cow and raise it yourself.
And that seems like a broken system, and I don't have the answers for how to fix that, but that's a bummer.
But there are pros and cons, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just like You're right. In a way, it seems broken, but at the same point, there are millions of people who would never ever eat meat if it wasn't for that
Yeah.
huge
Good point.
meat system. I'm not arguing either way. Some people would say, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Again, it's not my job to say this is what the agricultural landscape should look like. This is what agricultural economics should be. My job is to say this is the economic and agricultural reality for us. And this is why our product costs what it does. But you can taste the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, my ground beef is $12 a pound if you buy direct from me. But I mean, I'd put it up against anybody's. And it's just a crazy good product. And I don't get sticker shock personally when I see it. I don't have to buy it, but I'm having to raise it,
Yeah.
and the weird thing is, like, this year, I mean, 12 cows. I mean, we don't raise cows anymore. We just buy yearlings and we finish them out. And we've changed that because what we learned is it's actually almost cheaper for me to buy a yearling cow from the farm down the road in Rice and finish them out than it is for me to raise my own cow. Because these guys are paying all these properties they don't own. They don't have to pay taxes on the properties. They don't have to pay for the property. They're just paying all these other people's properties in a lot of ways just to help some of these other people stay in an ag tax code. And then their cows are going to feed on all this private timberland or public land. So a lot of their feed is just out in the hills on land that they also don't pay for. So they can sell me a yearling for cheaper than I can grow one myself.
That's
because
interesting.
I don't make my own hay. I don't do hay. Never want to do hay.
Yeah.
I'm fine buying hay.
Yep.
But the nice thing is I can buy that animal from them at a year. And then I can hyper focus on that last part, that 6 to 8 months. It's for us, it's about 7 or 8 months, part of their life where we finish them. And I'm giving them premium hays. They're getting the best grain that they can, that the best grain around here from Redbridge Farm, the grain mix that they sell, beef finisher. And they're rotated on pasture. So we're taking care of the land. We're not letting them just destroy areas. I mean, they're happy, healthy animals, and they're super well marbled and tender. Grass finished beef has become fashionable over the past decade or two.
And that gets abused, right?
Yeah,
The word.
yeah, that gets abused, but also I think a lot of people like the idea of it more than they like the actual thing. But also I think a lot of people just tend to like think of grain finished beef and they think of those barren feedlot cows, where you've got 100 cows in 1 acre and they're eating GMO corn that was, sprayed to death with glyphosate. And they're in this tiny barren space eating this corn for the last 3 months of their life till they're ill, and then they're put down. And you can get a really well marbled piece of beef out of that. But again, we just offer a different product. And again, I'm not even here to like say, okay, a lot of people get to eat meat who otherwise wouldn't get to eat meat if that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, but I know our product's awesome.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think that's a good way to be. Yeah.
But anyway, that's why, 12 cows, it's like, yeah, we're going to drop $24,000 probably on cows this year. Then I'm going to throw another $15,000 in hay and beef finisher in them. Then I'm going to spend another $13,000 probably butcher slaughtering those animals. And then I'm not going to see a dime of that money get any of that money back until next year.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's 50 grand.
And we're a micro ranch.
Yeah.
So yeah, the realities are crazy. These are the things that and this is why you can't really, if you wanted to look up ranching economics or whatever, or like what's the financial model of ranching? Most of your research is going to be based on like big ranches, and like kind of how a big ranch operates. This model it's a different thing, and it's a new thing. It's the small farm movement. It's a new thing.
Are you doing it then mostly for lifestyle? Like, being able, there's a sense of pride to own your piece of property. There's a sense of pride to raise these animals and, be interjected in a community. But there's a lot, for a lot of people, value in not living in the city, in the hubbub. And now it's important to note that this is very hard work, but you kind of get to be more free, even though on the back end, you're always married to it, right? Like fence breaks right now, you go home and mend a fence. It doesn't matter that it's 5:00. Like, and there's just always those things. But I mean, as you've been part of these businesses that have done $4 million in sales a year, right? And seen the money side of things. And again, I'm not trying to get too personal, but like 12 cows isn't $4 million a year in business. So is there a lot of what brought you up here and the model and the influence to your business? Is it quality and way of life?
Yes. But at the same time, I want the ranch to be financially viable. At our scale, but financially viable, there's a qualifier there. And it's because at our scale, financially viable is it pays our living expenses. Yeah. Kind of. It's not going to pay off the mortgage at our scale. It's just not. It's not going to, we're definitely not going to get rich. That's never going to happen. So, but my goal is, hey, we have a son now, and maybe we can have everything paid off by the time, he's old enough, and maybe he can actually live off the ranch. Maybe. Because he doesn't have debt. Because to be honest, that's the only way it works for anyone. You don't go into debt on a property and a house and a barn and fencing and get your money back ranching. It doesn't work. These inherited ranches around here that have been passed down through families for hundreds of years, those are the ranches that are keeping agriculture afloat right now. Without those places, and it works because they don't have any debt. Everything's paid off. So all my agricultural work just has to pay for my agricultural work, and I need to be able to eat, and pay my taxes. We hope we can provide that opportunity for our son. Whether he wants to do that or not, I don't know. Maybe he's going to be like, hell no, I don't want to do this after he, is 18 or whatever. But I'd like to give him the opportunity because the lifestyle is, I think it's important work, basically. Yeah. And I wouldn't even say it's because the lifestyle is great, because it's grueling. It's grueling. We have so many people who tell us that we're living their dream. And what I think there are a lot of people who tell us, I want to do that so bad. And I think what people want, I don't think they want to be ranchers trying to make it a viable business. I think almost no one wants that. I think what they want is to be independently wealthy homesteaders. And hey, that's cool. I would like that also, but I can't. I don't have it in me to sit back and just hope that the tavern pays our bills while we're homesteading. I just can't do it. Yeah. I really got to make a go at this. And every day, I think at least once a day, what was I thinking? And I think, man, maybe I should go back to the city and just run the tavern, and the tavern can pay me, basically, kind of paying myself, but, and just have my 2 days off, and actually take 2 days off other than like an email or a text or whatever. And not be taking these huge risks like we do, writing these checks for cows and feed and sheep as well, Do
you find more meaning though? Like, do you find more reward in your life, like going through this struggle, like, because if you go back to the tavern and, maybe lack of better words, but put the handcuffs back on 2 days a week, a little bit more chill, like, that's good. But also, like, there's this, the comfort crisis, right? Or complacency of where you don't feel like you're living out. I'm reading a book right now, and it's the yoga word of dharma, like your purpose, right?
Yep.
And so is that because I agree with you, people want to be, self-sufficient and financially independent homesteaders. That, like, we saw that during COVID. And this area actually saw that with a huge influx of people coming in from out of area. And we're starting to see those houses come back up for sale.
Exactly.
Because guess what? There's 5 months of winter here, and you got to burn firewood.
Yeah.
And not only you got to burn it, you got to cut it, and that's not for everyone. And I'm not trying to sound like a hardo or whatever, but like, it's a harsh reality of, like, it's challenging to live here. It's, getting home some days and 2 feet of snow is a son of a bitch, and you got your stock trailer jacked up and it's stuck in the ditch and baby's crying and the tractor won't start. And, like, that's all a reality here. So do you, like, how much of that for you is kind of like the bigger purpose, the dharma, the meaning of being here, and, like, questioning yourself every day, but still showing up and grinding that out? Like, is that a thing in your brain, like, that becomes a little chaotic of that back and forth, especially because you've tasted both sides of it now?
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of back and forth still, and it's but I think I know this is where I want to be, and that's what, and that so. Do I want to be ranching? Yes. Do I want to be doing it exactly the way we're doing it right now? I don't know. It's like trial and error. Does this work? It is working. It's just the problem is, like, we have to know, we need to meet demand and not exceed it. That's basically what we got to do. And we're trying to find that equilibrium, but this is where I want to be. There's no doubt about that. This is where my wife wants to be. We know that. It's just, how can we make this work and make it less stressful? Because it has been very much a rodeo, and it's crazy. The food trailer, even it's like, gosh, okay, here we are. We've got the ranch, and it's like so consuming. But now we've got this thing, and granted, we were doing food service last year without it. In some ways, it makes it easier. In some ways, it makes it harder. It's a facility we have to keep spotless. It's not a griddle that I just scrape and stow away and bring it back next week. But again, it's. I think it does. I think it's the ranch and the food trailer, even though they're technically separate businesses, they'll definitely, like, feed off of each other. We've already seen that. But it might seem crazy, and it probably is to some. Just, okay, so you're super stretched for time, you're stretched super thin, and now you've got this food trailer. What are you thinking? But I don't know. It's just, I really, really want to make this work, and I think this is a really good part of the equation, the food trailer. But either way, I think, that back and forth is tough, but we this is where we want to be, 100%. And I didn't hate running restaurants, by the way. I really enjoyed running restaurants, and still do to this day. But honestly, I think it's I love being outdoors, though. And that's the thing that you just can't get in a restaurant. It's just, sure, you have a big patio, whatever, but you're still inside most of the time, and I just love being outdoors. And really, the only thing I hate it when it's like 110 degrees.
Yep.
But I'll take -10 over 110.
Same.
But but most any weather, I'm totally happy to be outside. Getting poured on, whatever.
Yeah.
Put a raincoat on. Put some rain pants on if it's real bad. Yep. And so yes, the lifestyle and the locale. Just, this is where we want to be. But
how have you been received by the community? And I don't mean it's a two-part question. So one on the business side of the house, but two, just maybe from a social component, of I have to imagine I've been here for a while, my family for a long time, but I would have to imagine that there's some challenges of like trying to interject yourself into community where everyone has known everyone for a while. Like, so if you wouldn't mind touching on, both personally and then on the business side, coming into a small community like this.
It's interesting because people think they want to move out to the country to be like left alone. The opposite is actually true. If you want to be left alone, then you should go move to the city.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of anonymous there. There's just so many people. Here, it's so small that everyone knows everyone, or at least knows of everyone. And people are in your business, and it's fine. It's just different. It's just not what you expect, not coming from such a small town. And for us, we're here in Daisy, basically this neighborhood in Rice, and it's like 40 people or something, and it's kind of like a rural neighborhood. Everybody knows everybody. It's crazy. And the vast majority of everybody in the neighborhood has been super welcoming and super cool. And Jen, my wife, she's the social one really, but she has basically managed to meet so many of these people, and they're all super welcoming, and they, tons of them buy our eggs because we have chickens as well. Some buy our meat. We just sold meat to somebody down the road, like this week, to her son via her. And so we've been super well received by everybody. And then, so that's kind of like in our neighborhood, but also, people at the Colville Farmers Market and the Tweedle Farmers Market last year, people were just super stoked to see us.
Cool.
And it's cool. The farmers markets are so hard. Last year with our setup, we had just the pop-up kitchen, and tear it down and sell cuts, whatever. To do a 4-hour farmer's market is about 12 hours of work. To do twice a week, you're looking at, almost 25 hours of work just to do those two. With the food trailer, it's actually going to be more because I'm cleaning hoods now. I'm cleaning a griddle. I'm draining a fryer potentially. And then clean, so it's actually going to be even harder this year. I'm probably looking at 30 hours to do 2 farmers markets. That doesn't include all the ranching work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And all the, the website updates that need to be done, and the accounting, because I do all, most of our own accounting. And so it's incredibly difficult to do a farmer's market, and you show up and you're just beat. But then people are just so stoked to see you. They're just like, I love your meat, and I love your sliders, or I love your taco that you did with lamb or whatever. And I was like, okay, this is cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Or, oh, can I get another pack of lamb chops? Those were the best lamb chops I've ever had. And it's just like, it makes it all worth it. And I told, the restaurant industry is a lot like that, where you get this client, you can get your regulars who are like so gracious and just love what you're doing, love your food and love your hospitality. And that's what makes it worth it. To be honest, 90 to 95% of restaurants and ranching, it's a grind. And they're both super low margin industries, but it can be also crazy rewarding, and it has been so far. So we've been super well received. I haven't had, to be honest, I think the only thing, and I wouldn't say it's not well received, but there are the old farmers around here, and some of them just kind of look at what we're doing, and you can see it, and some of them have said it in roundabout ways. It's just like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
If you want to make this work, you need to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
And raise your 100 head of cattle and use everybody else's land to raise them, and then send them to the sale barn or have a big feedlot corp buy them, you know? And that's how this works. And I get that, and maybe they're right. Maybe this premium beef and lamb micro ranch, direct to consumer, maybe it either doesn't work here or maybe it just doesn't work in a lot of places. I don't know. We're going to find out, but I think we've got a ton of momentum, and we know every customer, like we don't have unhappy customers. Like people rave about our product, whether it's a frozen package of lamb or a frozen package of beef or our burger or a slider or taco or whatever. We just need to, I think we just have to educate more people on what we're doing. You know, because we even had somebody comment on a Facebook post recently and they're like, oh, there's plenty of pasture raised beef around me. And it's like, there's so much more to this than that. It was like, you just put pasture raised beef on all on this level playing field. And that's not at all, you know, the case. I mean, yeah, because you just drive around Stevens County. You'll see cows in the dead of summer on completely dead pasture with no other food source. You'll see cows in the winter on snow-covered pasture, no other food source. Not looking great, these animals. I mean, but the name of the game for scale ranching is least amount of inputs possible, cheapest inputs possible. That's how it's made to work. And that's because the consumer has gotten used to the benefits of scale. And so now we have to build our economic model to make that work.
And I think in the infancy, though, like the person that commented on your Facebook, that's not, you're developing a niche market, and they're not going to buy your beef anyways.
Exactly.
Like that's a mindset thing. And so it seems like in the infancy, developing your niche market, and then it would be cool if that could snowball, right? Down to maybe an everyday consumer, you know, however, whatever that looks like. But that niche market, it's really interesting, you know, just not talking cows now, but from an entrepreneurial side. It's have you ever read the Almanac of Naval? The hell's his last name? Ravikant, I think is his last name.
I don't think so.
One of the chapters, he basically talks about like you could sell 1,000 things for 50 cents or 100 things for $10.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Every time he says you should try to sell 100 things, you know, for $10 and make that premium thing. And so I'm really fascinated and intrigued with that's kind of your model essentially, you know, and seeing how that works here. It's really,
yeah. It's fun. It's a fun experiment. And yeah, it is also really risky though. You know, I mean, there is like, for example, on 100 head of cattle in the wintertime, they should be eating 3% of body weight, give or take, every day. That could be 1.5 or it could be 4.5. But what I found is 3% is almost right on the money every time. I can give them 3% of body weight and feed in the day, and it's like clockwork. They eat it. You know, and they don't seem to be, they're thriving, and they're not wasting, you know? And so on 100 head of cattle, let's say they all weigh 1,000 pounds, they're all eating 3% of body weight. It's like, okay, well, what is that? 3,000 pounds of feed that you should put out for those 100 head. You know, we buy 1,200 pound bales, you know, that's 2.5 of those, you know? I mean, are you seeing those big 100 head of cattle farms putting out 3,000 pounds of hay every single day for 100 head? They're not.
But to the point though, the money's not there for them to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not, you know, these old farmers probably be like, what are you smoking? You can't make money that way. And it's, or what are you thinking? You know, it doesn't work. But all I'm saying is our animals are thriving. And that can't be said for the vast majority of the animals and the vast majority of meat on the market. I mean, yeah, if my animals want 3% of body weight and feed, every day they're getting it. If they want 4%, they're getting 4%, like whatever it is. And they're getting hay that is not just the free stuff that I was able to harvest myself. You know, we try to be as local as possible, but the best hay we can find for the best price is coming from Oregon right now. And we're getting 2 semi loads of that hay, probably 3 this year. And I can pay the same price for that hay that I could pay for hay here but it's like almost double the protein content, and relative feed quality and relative forage quality, like off the charts compared to what I can get locally. So it's like, we don't have a mission statement per se. But yeah, being local as possible is one of those things. But if it's not the best, then if I can't get the best locally, then I got to go where the best is. Good news, Oregon is not super far away. I'm not getting it from like Maine or whatever, but but either way, I think again, it just comes back to, and I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but our product is it's just a totally different product, and from thriving animals.
So are you putting just saying that you're still developing your market, and I'm going to call it a niche market just for the purpose of this conversation.
It's 100% a niche market.
Okay. How much of a role does education play into that? I'm really impressed with your website. I'm impressed with your YouTube videos, your social media presence, because that's been a gap locally too of, let's just say for conversation's sake that, people, and I'm not just talking beef, but are making a very good product. The business side of it lacks often of the marketing, and the educational, getting it out, sometimes, I use this jokingly, but it feels like sometimes businesses are allergic to my money. It's like, how do I support you? Or, and so it seems that the thing when I was researching you before you came on that I was most impressed with is the multifaceted approach that you're taking. Like your YouTube videos are, I don't know what the right word is, but like studio quality. You got flyovers and the narration and the music, and the quality's super high. The website's really easy to navigate, and the pictures are top notch. And you're really taking an aggressive approach. And again, back to your food truck, like I love that side of things. Like I said, I geek out on the system part of running a business. Are you looking to, the direct question maybe is, do you think that continuing to develop the niche market does education play a role in that? And are you then educating customers through YouTube, through your social media, through this, maybe, this conversation? Like, is that going to be a decent piece of your niche market development wise?
It's one of the biggest pieces.
Because I've learned a ton in the last however long we've been sitting here. Like I've learned a lot.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest pieces because I basically have to help potential customers and existing customers understand the value of our product, and a lot of the value of our product is very technical. It's like, it's not pasture raised, like our beef is pasture raised, our lamb is pasture raised, but I'm saying it's so much more than that. And just calling beef pasture raised or lamb pasture raised doesn't justify the $12 or $15 a pound. There's so many other factors, and we try to put all that stuff on the website. We try to put it in our newsletters, and at the farmers markets, we're doing that all the time, and so the education piece it's almost the most essential thing for us in our niche market, just because why should I buy your product for way more than I can buy something at Walmart, or even at Super One, or whatever? Why should I buy your product? It's our job to educate people. We try our best. We try our best to have a pretty robust website with a lot of information on there. We have the newsletters that I send out. And my wife tells me I get too wordy in the newsletters sometimes, but like one of our most recent newsletters was "Fat is Your Friend," and I just kind of go on this kind of long diatribe about just how weird it is that we've demonized fatty meat culturally. How lean meat has kind of become really popular, and don't get me wrong, I even say this in the piece. I love wild deer and elk meat, and it's lean, but that's not necessarily what I'm looking for in beef, for example, and I love super buttery textured, fat on beef, and that what we do accomplishes that. Our lamb, the fat is great, and we don't even have to grain finish our lamb, because they're lamb is just a different meat, and they're younger animals. But either way, yes, long answer to your question. Yes, we're constantly having to try to educate people, and I feel like I want to do it more, and I want to get the word out more. It's just hard. It's hard to catch people's attention long enough to really help somebody understand why your product's special. Yeah. Especially if some people are just turned off by the price right away.
Well, and one thing, just from my own personal experience, one of the guys that works for me, like I said, we went and had lunch with you last Friday at the truck, and I don't know, half hour after having lunch, what the guy that works for me had said, he goes, I'm surprised that I still feel pretty good. Like, and so you're using small batch sourdough bun, your beef. Like if I read the menu right, the pickles were from scratch, your sauce was from scratch. And it seemed like a really good balance of like comfort food. And he even said, when I got it, it looked like a greasy burger, but it was really the sauce that you'd put on it. And he said, and when I got done eating it, like I didn't feel like I needed to go take a nap. And me and the other guy that had lunch there, we both agreed. We were there at 11:30 or noon. And that's always the worst part, to eat a big greasy meal, because then we got 2 or 3 hours of work left and we're outside doing stuff.
Yep.
And we all agreed with that, of like whatever that was. And I talked with Tam about this when she was on my podcast, like in my own little health journey. I dropped a lot of weight the last 5 years, and I kickstarted that on a keto diet. And I basically said no to breads for quite a while. And I enjoy eating Tam's bread. Like, and I'm still cognizant, I don't just live off bread. Like carbs are carbs, no matter how you make them. Yeah. But I have a slice of her bread with some butter and a little salt on it. And like, I don't get that gut bomb feeling, and so I think that's, to the right person, that's worth paying for, like I enjoyed that. It definitely got our wheels turning,
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I mean, that's, and that's why we're doing this. It's just so awesome. We have a happy customer. And we had somebody driving off from the food trailer last week, and they stopped and rolled the window down and said to Jen, they're like, "That's the best burger I've ever had." And it kind of catches people off guard, just because it's so simple. It's meat, cheese, sauce, and a bun. But the sauce has like 10 ingredients in it, and it's made from scratch. The bun is from small batch sourdough. The beef is our beef. And I mean, you don't have to. There's really good gourmet, fancy, like weird burgers with weird stuff on it, and I love that stuff. But I also love just a real simple, gooey burger with like the perfect sauce, and that's kind of what we try to do. Sometimes we get more complicated with our tacos. We might do like last year we did some braised lamb shank tacos at the farmer's market, and those were a huge hit. Which is obviously more involved than a slider, but. Either way, it's been super fun to.
Well, and I think here for a lot, and I'm generalizing, but my belief is I think for a lot of people, just that plain, what you see is what you get. When I was in 6th grade, I was not a lot of people know this, but I was like an avid basketball fan. Shaquille O'Neal was my favorite player, and he was playing for the Lakers at the time. And there was a basketball camp in LA. It was actually in Santa Barbara that the Lakers were putting on, and I wanted to go to it so bad. And my dad said, "Yeah, you should do that, but you need to raise the money to go. You got to have sweat equity into this." And my brother played baseball, Little League baseball at the time, and so they played games at Happy Dale and then at the pool here on Main Street. And my dad's always been really supportive in my life, and I'm like, I don't remember what it was, but I'm going to say it was like $700 or $800 was just the camp, and he said he'd cover airfare and help me out. But I needed to come up with $700 or $800. And this is back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And he said, we have the Legion Hall that's just past Sandy's here in town. And they have a food truck that they do at like Town and Country Days and different stuff. Okay. And he said, he said, well, why don't we sell burgers at the games? There's no vending and we got to be at these games anyways. We got to watch your brother play. And they were double headers twice a week. He said, why don't we try to turn a dime there? And he really led and spearheaded it, but I had to go get a food handler's license. And we went through and he kind of had this vision of, well, what's going to make us different? And, what we ended up doing, it was cool. Like the Legion ended up letting me use that food trailer, and then we revamped it. We repainted it. We redid the hood, kind of just put some love and time into it. They let me use it. And then my dad made a deal at the time. Terry Baxter owned TJ's Tavern, which is just outside here. Mm-hmm. And Terry forever had hand pressed his own burger. He would buy it in bulk and then make his own. It was a big, like 3rd-pound burger or whatever. And so we were getting Terry's burgers. And then we just kept it simple, salt and pepper and a little Lowry's and then we would actually grill the bun. That was a big thing. So we'd grill the bun, put cheese on it, melt the cheese, and then cook it medium rare. And we were actually then it was funny, the attendance to these games shot through the roof because people heard you could get a good $3 cheeseburger at the Little League game.
Wow.
And we were lined up. And I mean, I made 2 or 3 times more than what I needed to go to this camp. And it was a really fun experience. It taught me, work ethic, whatever. But I guess the proof of concept, to tie it back into what we're talking about, is people would just show up for a cheeseburger.
Yep.
And it was that simple, and I'm probably tooting our horn a little bit, but it was better than what you could get somewhere else. And it was out of a Legion food truck at a Little League baseball game. And we decided to be really good at 2 things, and not try to complicate it. Like I think the little things of toasting the bun and the right seasoning and not cooking it to a hockey puck was a win.
Yeah. And hand forming patties is essential, if you ask me. Like, I will never buy, I don't have to because we have our own beef, but I mean, even beforehand, I will never buy a preformed patty, period.
Yeah.
You could put 2 burgers in front of me and tell me to figure out which one is preformed and which one was hand formed, like to order or close to it. I could pick it out every time. It's just, it changes the texture 100%. But that's why we don't even sell preformed patties as in ground beef. We only sell 1 pound packs of ground beef. Just
when you make a burger in the food truck, do you hand press it, or do you do like the press thing on the grill?
I just use the spatula. So I form it into balls. It's 1/3 of a pound. Just make a bunch of 3rd-pound balls and then throw it on, salt it, and then smash it with the spatula. So it's smash burger-ish. But yeah. And then, but just hand formed into 3rd-pound balls. But yeah. But yeah, it's been cool. That was a cool story of the burgers. And it doesn't have to be fancy. We have, we do have this farm to table dinner we do. And
I was going to touch on that.
Okay.
You want to just let the listeners kind of cue in on that, what you guys are doing? I watched your video from last year and then read what you guys are doing this year, and it sounds like a great experience.
Yeah, so our first one was last year, and it's a 5-course meal. It's at Crossroads Event Center in Colville, which is a beautiful space.
And that's just on Main Street, right? Kind of down from the movie theater. Is that correct? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it's easy to miss, but because it's pretty busy down there on Main Street. But you go in there, and it's just this beautiful historic space, and people can see it on the video, the inside. But we do this 5-course meal there, and we use our lamb, beef, and eggs. And then we also use a bunch of ingredients from other local producers. And I have a chef friend. I mean, I've been in kitchens my whole life, but I have a chef friend that comes over and helps me do it as well. So he and I are in the kitchen the whole day, the day before and the day of. And then my wife kind of handles the front of the house. But it's just it's super cool to like, I mean, how do I say this? I don't know. There's really not an experience. To get an experience like that, you almost kind of need to go to Spokane.
For sure.
So it's a fun thing for us to do here because it's like, hey, you don't have to go to Spokane. You can have a really cool 5-course meal here in town once a year with us with ingredients from local producers. I mean, like this year we'll have our egg, but we're going to put salmon roe on it, which is one of my favorite ways to eat a deviled egg is with some salmon roe on it. We're going to do some lamb arancini, which again was those fried risotto balls that I fell in love with in Italy. But we'll do it with some lamb meat in there and drain like braised beef shanks and stuff like that. It's just that's kind of our one upscale thing of the year. You know, we're at the farmers markets, we do street food, and then we have this one kind of upscale dinner thing we do every year, and it's just fun, you know.
And is that available to anyone? You purchase a ticket for that ahead of time?
Yeah. So I think we're doing 48 people this year. Last year we did 44. And so there's a limit to tickets.
Are there tickets still available for this one?
I think so. I asked for an update today, but I'm waiting on that update. But I think there's a few left. We sold out really fast last year, so we're probably getting close if I had to guess based on last year's timeline. But
where can you buy those tickets?
So if you go to, I think the website is crossroadsincolville.com.
Okay.
But also you can if you just go to like, I'm trying to think the easiest place. If you just go to our website, waterloo-ranch.com, and then go to the newsletter, the most recent newsletter, there's a link to tickets in there and a video to last year. But so I think there's.
And what day is that for this year?
It's Saturday, May 17th.
Okay, so that's coming up.
Yeah,
a few
real
weeks.
soon. And we're excited for it. Again, it's, so we're doing it this year, $75 a person, but that's 5 courses. Fired Up Brewing will be there making drinks for people who want to purchase drinks. Again, it's wild though. I mean, even at $75 a person, it's just like the margin is just so tiny.
Yeah.
It's negative if you put Jen's labor in and my labor in. It's actually negative, but it's cool. So
that's a cool community collab though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's a community thing for us on this thing. This thing, it's just fun because again, it's like last year at the end of the dinner, people were just like, that was so cool, you know.
Well, and how cool to be able to share conversation at the table while eating good food. Like, that's a staple.
We had so many gracious customers last year at the dinner, and so we're like, okay, even though we basically last year we actually donated the couple $100 we made or whatever it was, we donated it to charity this year. I think it's probably just going to break even, to be honest.
Yeah.
Again, negative if you count our labor, but whatever. It's just I'm trying to get more people exposed to who we are. We're definitely in startup mode still, 100%. And so sometimes it doesn't feel like we're in startup mode just because we do have a decent amount of name recognition, in the community, and we do have a lot of big fans, but we keep growing, I mean, again, we've grown our cows up to 12, which doesn't sound like a lot. This year we have 40 lambs, I think, this year. And so that's not huge either. We've got about 70 sheep on the property right now, but again, 40 lambs, it's not a small amount of meat to sell. And but yeah, it's I don't know, it's a cool product as well. And I haven't really talked enough about it, but I kind of got stuck on beef earlier and cows.
I kind of took you down that path.
It's, I think it's, it happens just because, a lot of people don't even eat lamb.
I've never ate lamb, man. I got to confess.
Okay, there you
go.
go.
So we're going to have to change that.
Yes, definitely. And I think, so there's a lot of people who don't eat lamb or have never eaten it. Then there's people who had a bad lamb experience and just, okay, I'm good, never again. And yeah, that represents a very large percentage of people, those two groups of people. And that's where the education piece is super important. But especially for those people who had a bad experience, because there's a lot of bad lamb out there. And some of it I think the vast majority of the time it's because it wasn't from a thriving animal. But also some breeds have like stronger flavors than others. And the breed we specialize in is Katahdin, the Katahdin breed. And it's the exact breed that I was buying from that farmer up north of Seattle. And he kind of turned me on to this breed. And they're a hair sheep, so they don't need to be sheared. They shed their wool in the springtime. And some people say that is what contributes to like the more balanced flavor of the hair sheep breed, is that something about the lanolin or whatever. I don't think that's been scientifically proven. But whatever it is, something makes our breed of sheep just, the flavor is just out of this world. And we're the, yeah, we are the only people selling USDA cuts of Katahdin sheep, as far as I know, anywhere near here. There's a lot of other lamb around here, but I don't think anybody's doing Katahdin breeds. The main reason for that is just because a lot of the biggest carcasses come from the wool sheep breeds. And so a lot of ranches just focus on, okay, I want a big carcass because economically that's, it helps. I mean, we talked about cows and butcher costs. I mean, a butcher slaughter cost for a lamb is, a couple $100 basically. You might walk away with 30 pounds of meat take home. And so you're paying almost $7 a pound. If you bought a live lamb from me and took it to the butcher yourself, you're paying almost $7 a pound. You can go to Walmart and get some New Zealand lamb for that price. Yeah. And you didn't have to do anything, you know? So, again, the economics are just wild. I mean, the scale and global supply chains have just made small farming incredibly difficult, small ranching incredibly difficult. And it feeds a lot of people. Yeah. It feeds a lot of people. Yeah. But again, our product is special. We've got the breed that we love. And our husbandry practices with our lambs, I mean, and sheep, we're rotating them on pasture. It's super labor intensive. How we rotate our sheep to basically make sure our soil is
every 3 days is what your video said.
Yeah. It's brutal. I mean, I spend this time of year, I'll spend about 8 hours a week moving sheep. Wow. Just moving sheep, not doing anything else that I have to do there. It takes about 4 hours to move them from one paddock to the next. And, but if I just sent them out there and just let them eat it, well, one, they might end up with parasite problems, just because they're on the same ground and eating too close to the ground. But also, I might get one feed off of that whole pasture, whereas I can run them through there and move them, and I can bring them back to the starting point after 30 days. Where it's more safe from parasites, but get a second feed on every single one of those paddocks. Wow. And the nutritional value of their forage is better that way. They're getting more forage that way from the soil. And so that's less hay for us. But eventually they do need hay. And again, this year they were on USDA Supreme hay from Oregon, orchard grass. And nobody's feeding that. 16% protein. Relative forage quality of like 155. I know that maybe means nothing to you, and that's fine. But the point is just it's killer feed, and you can taste the difference in a thriving animal. You can just taste the difference. But
can you buy lamb at Redbridge? Like, are you selling it in package?
We have some cuts of lamb at Redbridge. I think 3 or 4 different types.
What would you recommend for a guy like me that has never had it before? What cut would you recommend, and then how to prepare it?
Good question. I think I would say lamb chops, loin chops, lamb loin chops. And one cool thing, every single cut on our website, that's every single cut we sell, you can go to our website and find that cut and click on that cut. And in the description, you'll see a discussion about the cut, but then preparation as well. Cool. And we give you exactly what exact preparation guidelines on every single cut. Awesome. In the description. And then, so I think I would say lamb loin chops. But it's tough. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be prepared right, and it's just it's hard. I mean, following a recipe, even the most simple recipe, there are people who, if you don't have some cooking experience, like you don't cook a lot at home or whatever, not necessarily professionally, it's tough to follow a recipe. There's some stuff you just got to know that's happening, because it's like my skillet. Okay, is it 700 degrees or is it 550 degrees? Mm-hmm. And that changes the game. But you're probably not over there with an infrared thermometer trying to get the exact reading, So So either way, I wish I could just cook a lamb chop for every single person who's never eaten lamb, in the community or never or had a bad experience with lamb. I really wish I could because I know that it would just change the game for them. But either way, we hope our descriptions, our preparation guidelines, we hope.
So what about, I'm decent with cooking beef and deer and elk. But like with beef, I'm more of a medium rare guy. And, you can read online that's 140 internal temp. I usually pull at like 115, 120. And then sometimes I'll cover it depending on the cut of the meat, or I'll just let it sweat out, for 5 to 10 minutes.
Yep.
And then the easy, when I first started cooking, and I actually learned this from my dad, who probably got it off a cooking channel, but it was, have you seen like the push test for your fingers? Like this would be rare, your pointer finger, medium rare, done, and then well done.
Yes.
And that worked. I mean, that got me.
It's pretty good. It's not bad.
Close enough. And then once you've done it enough, you get in tune with how you like your meat cut. When we're talking lamb, for a guy that's just starting to cook it, are you looking at that 160 internal temp? Or are you cooking it similar to beef where you're pulling it and letting it sweat out a little bit? Or, what's personal preference?
I mean, there's basically no cut of lamb or beef that I would recommend. Well, unless you're braising, and then braising temperature is not even like something you pay attention to. You're braising it until it's, fall apart. But if you're cooking something in a non-braising way, I mean, I would never recommend anything at 160
Agreed.
Or anything close. Our instructions usually our preparation guidelines are always for medium rare.
Yeah, and
of course, I think it's somewhere in there it always says or longer if you want it, but we recommend medium rare. Same thing for all of our steaks and lamb chops and lamb shoulder steaks and all that stuff.
Gotcha.
So yeah. Medium rare is the way to go for sure, if you ask me. Anything else is just too hard to get it to keep it from drying out and getting tough. I mean, it doesn't really matter how great the cut of meat is. It's gonna be okay. Maybe it's not tough, but I don't know. Probably in my book it would be, but it's gonna be tougher and it's gonna be drier the higher the temp you get it. Period. There's no way around that.
Yeah. Well, I think like
unless you're braising.
The angriest I've seen my dad is someone, he does a lot of outdoor cooking and has people over, and he's very willing to cook a piece of meat however you want it. But if someone says well done and then puts ketchup on a ribeye, I can see him start to like twitch out. Yeah, I mean it's the worst.
Yeah, I know people that do that, and I'll give them hell, but at the same time, it's hey, you do you. But again, it's I think there are so many people though, like lamb, who maybe just haven't had it right. I think there's also a lot of people who just haven't had a medium rare piece of meat prepared correctly as well. Because you can get something medium rare and it still not be good. Like there's a way to get it to medium rare. There's several different ways, but there's definitely wrong ways to get a steak medium rare, and it's not going to be that great.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's incredibly complex cooking is, and I tell my wife this all the time. I've been in kitchens my whole life, and it's just like there's things that like you just know intuitively after being in kitchens your entire life that you would never even think to tell someone if you were writing a recipe out for them.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't even cross your mind, because it's just like, oh, of course this is that. But yeah, we hope our descriptions we hope our preparation guidelines are pretty solid. You can let me know.
Yeah, I'll check it out. So we've obviously touched a lot of things. I honestly think I could probably do 2 or 3 more hours. So
probably
I think let's plan on another episode. Okay. And I would like to really, when you come back, talk about the regenerative egg side of the house. I meant to get into that today. We didn't touch on it really directly. And so let's do that. But in closing, Waterloo Ranch out in Daisy, you guys have a food truck set up. You're going to be at the farmers markets. You're updating Facebook regularly, where to find you. You can access their YouTube from their website, or just type in Waterloo Ranch to YouTube. It's worth checking out. I found your videos awesome. Anything else that you want to say in closing as far as how people can find you or where to find you, or just a plug to the community or listeners about Waterloo?
Let's see here. I'll say, thanks for the props on the YouTube videos. The best ones were not done by me. I'll say that. There are some corny YouTube videos in there that are like, not exactly studio quality, and I'll do some of those myself, but the best ones were done, by a great friend of ours. And, he did a great job on them. So, and, it's also really, informative of kind of like what we do, and some great shots at the ranch. But
For sure.
let's see what else. So we'll be at the Colville Farmers Market this year, or the Northeast Washington Farmers Market, I believe it's technically called. Yeah, we'll be there most Wednesdays and Saturdays, at least for a while, with the food trailer.
Okay.
And the food trailer is it's actually called Locally Grown Grub by Waterloo Ranch. So different name, but by Waterloo Ranch. And it's all on the same website and all on the same Facebook page. So if you go to the Waterloo Ranch website, there's a Locally Grown Grub tab, and then Facebook, same thing. We just put everything on that one page. So if you ever want to know where we're going next or whatever, that's the best place to go, either Facebook or the website.
Cool.
I will also say that our lamb is also, we have retail lamb cuts available at Milk House Market in Colville.
That's right, across from Zips, cruising through 395 on the west side of the road. Yep.
So Milk House Market over there, they sell tons of local stuff, including some of our lamb cuts. So that's available there. And of course, lamb and beef at Redbridge Farm Feed Mill Store. Which is mill and feed store,
right across from Harvest Foods, west side of 395, heading north.
Yeah, and you can also buy, if you want, you can avoid the markup. If you want to just buy direct from us, you can do that at farmers markets. We'll have cuts of not only prepared foods with our lamb and beef at the farmers markets, but we'll have retail cuts available there. You can either just show up and see what we have, or you can go to the website and reserve a cut, so you're certain that we have it there for you when you show up at the farmers market, and you'll just select Colville Farmers Market as your pickup point.
Gotcha.
So there's that option. And then lastly, I think would just be that yes, we have retail cuts available at Redbridge Farm and Milk House Market, but not every single cut is available at both of those places. Some of those places, or some of those cuts, are not in the display cases, and you would need to basically just go to the website where you can, the online ranch shop, you can find every single cut we carry, and then you can reserve it and pick your pickup point or whatever.
So I think I misspoke earlier. You're available at Milk House Market in Colville. I was thinking the Creamery in Chewelah was the location I gave. So let me, to the listeners, what's the name of the one in Colville?
Milk House Market in Colville.
Milk House Market. That's just around the corner from Safeway on Main Street, still west side of the road. And that's a cool little shop to check out for sure. There's lots of good stuff in there. And I love when they have ice cream. They do some homemade ice cream in there that's legit.
Yep.
Cool. Right on. Thomas, I appreciate your time. It's been great getting to know you. I'm pumped to have you guys in the area. Looking forward to my next Waterloo burger, and also looking forward to trying some lamb.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on, and hopefully I didn't take up too much time. And
no,
but it was super nice to meet you, and we appreciate your support on Friday. And I'm excited for you to try some lamb too.
Cool.
So
well, we'll do this again soon.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
you.
everyone.